Open the Conservation Commission meeting September 23rd at 7:34. Does anybody get any omissions or corrections to the minutes?
I've got two additions on the first page. Notice of intent, Mass Bay Transportation Authority. Comment that we had asked them to refresh the wetlands flags. And then on the second page, last notice of intent, 9 Area Road, it was noted in discussion on the plans that a portion of their lot is in the riverfront as well. Those are the two that I have.
I have a comment on the MBTA one as well, notice of intent. I thought specifically they were talking about 66 new parking spots.
66, wasn't it?
I think,
Yeah, I forget what the number was.
66. And also, it says that there was a discussion of old plans and approvals and to be sure they're in compliance. I just wanted to mention that, wasn't it that detention area that's next to the, that's
right
part of the
as you
old
go.
maintenance plan?
Yeah, the O&M.
Yeah, detention area maintenance. And then, I don't know if you want to add details also in the notice of intent, 195 Tahadawan, that the previous site plans, one was a conventional development versus a cluster development, which is the current plan.
Mm-hmm.
And that those are the ones considered before the planning board. The planning board recommended the cluster development.
How do you get to Hadawan when it's more like Howard Ave with Davies houses?
Notice the head on.
Yeah, but,
Can you?
I mean, if you drive up there, it's more Howard Ave than it is.
Oh, that's a very
Hadawan.
confusing area where
Oh, it's
to have
super
one Harvard,
confusing.
like cross or merge.
Right, but that's what they're
or something.
filed as.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever.
So I move that we accept the minutes as amended.
Oh, wait, I have one, sorry, one more question.
sorry.
It's all right.
Sorry.
On the second.
Jim?
On the second page, still under notice of event Healy Corner, 195 Tahadawan. In the middle of it, it says, you said there will be an operation and management plan which will address cleaning by a private entity. I wasn't sure what cleaning it referred to. Was it the stormwater infrastructure? Okay, maybe mention that. I don't know.
Okay. Any more omissions or corrections? If not, somebody's made a motion to accept the minutes.
I'll make a motion to accept.
Second.
As amended.
Second been approved. All those in favor?
Aye.
I see we got budget. Is that something you want to tackle now, or you want to?
Just generally for the budget, apparently, you can't spend the money out of Oak Hill without town meeting approval, even though it was already approved for conservation. So that means coming up with a budget every year, going to special town meeting to get that budget approved, then we can spend the money.
When did that start?
Apparently, that's what it always should have been. But no one mentioned that to me.
So that means we got to come up with some sort of
Yeah, so-
idea of what we may use out of there.
Well, and plus I'm going back and forth right now because we're already committed to the $10,000 for the parking lot, which is under construction at
Mhm.
Cloverdale. And if you notice that, the swing signs, the survey. So I put in for around 20,000 to cover the year, to cover those costs. And I talked to the water department because every now and then I get a $2,000 bill for graveling the road at Oak Hill. And was that the original
We shouldn't-
understanding?
No,
No,
That they-
no, that changed a few years ago.
that's
Okay.
their responsibility. They got the water
They have
tower
water
up
tower
there.
there.
To pay for it.
Right, yeah. We
Because
never
they-
never paid for it until a few years ago.
You did pay for it like 2 or 3 years ago.
Right, yeah.
We don't need a road, we just need trails.
Oh.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a good point.
Okay.
Mhm. So
Okay.
I'll send that bill back.
And I think, well, I haven't got one yet this
Okay.
year, but I asked them,
Just address it.
you know, because you can't just send me a $2,000 bill without me knowing about it anymore. But it's
Yeah.
coming at least. But that was it, I just basically wanted to let you know that we're
So
happy.
that's where the sign money was coming from too, wasn't it?
Yeah, so I put all those known elements into it, and I added some other stuff for, nails and wood planks and copying salamander signs. I mean, there's all sorts of little stuff that comes up during the year.
Can there be a miscellaneous category?
That's
It's
what-
usually like signs, we go through, like
Yeah.
those in the new ones.
Yeah, kiosks.
Or we could just say maintenance,
Yeah.
like land maintenance.
Yeah.
And cover a lot of things.
Yeah, so the only thing I especially want to make sure is that if I ask for $20,000 out of the Oak Hill, that if I don't use it, it stays in Oak Hill. It doesn't like all of a sudden end up in the general fund.
Are we gonna be
Right.
responsible for the thing down, that walk and stuff? Are we paying for that? The one out over the swamp?
Cloverdale?
That's,
Cloverdale?
that's a grant,
Okay,
which is almost at 100%. Actually, they got one more order of lumber, and then they got all the supplies and very close to done.
Okay,
okay.
all right, let's keep going.
All right, I guess we'll move on to request for a permit extension, Fort Pond Aqua Vegetation Management, Mass DEP file number 204-823. Sir.
Come on up.
Hi, folks.
Hi.
Dominic. Dominic Maringolo from Solitude Lake Management. I also have John Bergeron from the Fort Pond Association here. We're requesting a 3-year extension of the order of conditions originally issued in 2016, but this project goes further back than that. It was refiled in 2016, but we're basically managing non-native vegetation in Fort Pond, specifically curly-leaf pondweed. So we're doing an annual cycle of a survey for the curly-leaf pondweed, a post-treatment survey. Essentially, we're treating just specific areas of the pond on an annual basis, wherever the curly leaf's popping up, and trying to keep that at bay and under control with this annual maintenance. We're only treating like 10 to 20 acres of the pond a year, and I think we're without management, the curly leaf would continue to spread throughout other areas of the pond, grow more densely through July. Then all that biomass would basically die off. Unfortunately, in the very heat of the summer, where it would probably do the most damage to dissolved oxygen and nutrient levels. So overall, the program's actually changed very little over the years. But it's been very successful in terms of keeping the curly leaf at bay. So I do have. This is a report actually from 2018, just documenting the dates of the different activities on the pond, and I don't know if you want to pass those around.
Sure.
But yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions. You'd like to have a 3-year extension of the order of conditions so that we can continue the program, but I'd be happy to answer any questions or any other discussion that the commission might want to do.
Has there been any other invasive species shown up there? We had something up at Dolphin Pond. We were worried about that getting down there.
Oh yeah, you got water chestnut at Dolphin Pond. You got fanor, I think in Long Pond and Spectacle Pond. So fortunately, and you have curly leaf at most of those ponds too. But fortunately for Fort Pond, they've only had the curly leaf so far. One of the good things about the residents kind of being educated, and also us going out there at least twice a year, is we can, if we found a piece of water chestnut or found a piece of fanwort out there, that we'd be able to take action on that immediately with the association, and obviously informing the commission. But if we were to find that water chestnut, we would pull it out immediately. Obviously, for water chestnut, that's the best way to get rid of that. Fanwort, we would keep an eye on that, hand pull it if we could, or come back to the commission and talk about other options if it involved something significantly different. But there's also a lot of good plants in the pond. There's ribbon leaf pondweed, tape grass, which are good native species. So the program has been able to control the curly leaf pondweed and still maintain some of those other native species in the pond, which are important for fish and wildlife habitat.
Do you get fish mortality?
No.
Nothing.
Yeah,
Where?
Haven't seen any. I'm on the
Okay.
pond as often as I can be, probably 80 days this year, so.
That's what?
So I haven't noticed any.
Yeah.
Do you
Yeah,
wanna
actually,
ju- he
we
needs
use
to
the
say who he
herbicide.
is
Hmm?
for Amy's notes. He just needs to introduce himself.
Oh, sorry, John Bergeron, 227 Newtown.
And then you said you perform, I know you said when you perform it to reduce issues with DO. When do you usually treat, like May?
We usually treat in May as early as possible. Typically the growth cycle for curleaf is a little bit unique in the aquatic environment. It starts, actually grows a little bit in the fall, kind of stays dormant over the winter, and then as soon as the sunlight becomes strong enough, even sometimes through the end of the ice period, it'll start to grow, comes up very quickly, very early, forms its reproductive structures and starts to die off in July. So this is definitely one of the types of plants we try to treat early as possible, typically early May, and if it's been a warm spring, maybe even the end of April in some cases, but typically early to mid-May is the general time frame.
Fort Pond is our only lake without a DO problem in town.
Okay, that's good to know.
It's the only
Maybe keep it that
non-impaired
way.
waterway. And then the Clean Water Act.
So you're looking for a 3-year extension, correct?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay.
Anybody else got any questions?
Nope.
So someone want to make a motion to extend this for 3 years?
I'd like to make a motion to extend, are we extending the notice of intent? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, notice. extending
Permit
the
extension.
Permit extension for Mass DP number 204823 for Fort Pond Aquatic Vegetation Management.
Have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Who wants the extension?
That's a good
Because
question.
it's gonna need to be recorded.
Yeah, I mean, we can do that for you if you'd rather have it sent, we can have it sent directly to us. I'm not sure what we've done in the past, to be honest with you.
Tell you what, I'll send you an email when it's ready. and you can
Okay,
figure out where it goes.
okay, all right, thank you.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Can I have one of those back?
Yeah, there's a couple extras tonight.
Pass them.
We've got a 7:45.
What's the meeting, public meeting request for determination of applicability, 30 Taylor Street, to install a fence? Is there-
Are you guys ready?
The depot side or the-
Yeah, the-
Hi,
Well,
Come on up.
right here?
Yeah.
Yep, right here.
Right here.
Cool. Thank you.
Can we suit you? If you want.
If you want to introduce yourselves, sign in some documents and tell us what you have planned.
I am Noelle Cutler and owner of L&L Canine, and I'm hoping to build a fence behind the building. I'm sorry, I'm just her friend here. Just
Moral support.
my note taker.
Yeah, there you go.
And my decorator.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Fence designer.
Yeah, there you go.
Can you tell me your location? Where's 30 Taylor Street?
30 Taylor Street is, do you know the big green building?
Yeah?
The big parking lot? It's the beige building facing like the parking lot. So the side of the building is actually on the street side.
Do you have a picture of your building or the lot or anything?
I do.
Do you have the plan?
Yep. Oh, yeah.
The plan didn't, the first page of the plans, that one was good. The second page didn't transfer very well. Or
Oh, the
scan.
copy?
Yeah, that one didn't
I
scan
have
well at all.
better
Through that bit. Yeah.
So this maybe, that's the, I don't know if you want to look at the original.
Is this the Page Building?
They said it was electrical, maybe?
I thought it was the page building. So how far away is the train?
The train is, so this is the chain link, so the train's like probably here.
Yeah, so it's the old Page. What was Page or going back further than that, a crane building.
So you're looking to put a fence on this side of the chain link fence?
Yes.
And where's the buffer?
Oh, sorry, here you go. Take that one.
Oh,
The brick is behind it. If I remember correctly.
Right.
oh, river.
This is an RDA.
Brook is in
Yeah.
front of it.
Yep.
Yeah, and
Brook's
the
on
normal
other side of
event,
the
I
street.
could have approved this
Brooks
as
on-
administrative, but it was in the 15 in the riverfront, and she can't have a gap underneath because it's for dogs
Right.
specifically, so.
Yeah.
That would kind of defeat
Yeah,
the
it'd
purpose,
be
especially,
the-
especially if a Jack Russell.
Yeah.
This is, yeah, especially a Jack Russell, sure.
Or mountain cur.
That's the front of the building itself.
Yeah, so you're going behind it or side of it or where?
A little on the side and then
Look around
behind.
the building.
So if you look at that one,
Yeah.
So,
the
Towards the car.
the train
Yeah.
track is over here, and wetlands is on the
So
other
it's
side.
behind.
So this is a chain link fence, so it's on the side, should be fine.
yeah, and it's in a currently like already developed area. There's no tree
Is it
impact.
grass?
There's
Or pavement, or what is it?
There's grass, but then it looks like there was an old concrete slab or something that was
Underneath it.
chopped out, maybe.
So
So
it's
it's
just
grass
grass.
I just did a drive-by.
and a
There was a
little.
major grain store there at one point
grain
when I was a
store.
kid.
Oh.
Yeah. It looks like loading docks maybe at one
Yep.
time in the back, yeah.
Yep. Yep.
I don't think it would have any impact, it's just an RDA.
That was my conclusion after driving by and reviewing materials.
Okay, I can peek at that, I'm sorry.
Sure, sure.
Yeah, between the train and the railroad, there's nothing out there.
Right. There's no animal going over there.
I don't think it's gonna impact
Fences,
much of anything.
fences are
And the
limited.
fences are
So
limited.
none
There's a
of
fen-
it
there's
is
a
within
fence
the
already.
riverfront.
Yeah.
It's near, but not into the riverfront.
You've already got.
It is in the riverfront.
It is in
Oh,
the
it is?
riverfront,
It's
but
it's
you've,
in a
al-
lawn portion of a riverfront.
but you
Right.
already
But
have
there's-
a fence
You
and,
got blacktop.
and you've got blacktop.
Hmm.
Right.
There's not a lot of habitat happening between the railroad and Taylor Street.
Cause you have to go
No, that big
across.
concrete is two between the building and the.
Yeah,
Oh, so
In a
the
currently
riverfront
developed
is from
area.
here out to here, is that what it's saying? Okay, I see.
and then you. I don't think there's, I think it's a.
No.
So what do you
Now,
want?
what about the dog poop? How are you gonna manage the dog poop? They poop in there?
So, it'll all be bagged and I have a trash company, but this isn't, like, this isn't a potty yard. This is more of like an exercise training, like, I'm training them. I'm
Mhm.
teaching them how to potty on leash, I'm teaching them where to potty, so it's not gonna be just a,
Go out there for the
yeah,
whole day.
Kennel.
right, it's more of, exercise and training and working and, team building stuff like that.
So do you own the building or do you just
No.
renting it?
Leasing it, yeah, renting.
The owner okay with that? If she's a lessee?
That would be in.
It's a
up to them.
requirement
Oh, okay.
because it's
It would
part
be in
of,
the lease.
it's
Okay.
part of the lease, it has to be done in
Okay.
order to
Okay, as long as they
get
are
occupancy.
okay with you
Yeah.
doing that. Okay.
Yeah, I sent everybody
Alright.
their stuff too.
Yeah, okay, cool. Somebody wanna make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we close the public hearing and issue a -3 determination for 30 Taylor Street, DP file number,
So
sorry,
negative is good.
there isn't one. It's a reflex.
Negative is what you want. Okay.
Okay, I'll
cool.
second that.
All those in favor?
Aye. Okay. Alrighty, you're all set?
Yay,
Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
So there is no appeal period on this, so as far as Concom's concerned, you can go ahead. I will mail you the permit when it comes in, but you don't need to do anything else with the permit.
Yay, thank you so much.
Alright, thank you.
Everyone have a good night.
Thank you.
Another satisfied customer.
I'm gonna go back up for a few minutes.
Yep.
What's the mowing and haying all about?
The mowing and haying is basically what, if anything, we need to do, especially with the haying piece of things, because right now, I don't believe there is any formal agreement with Dan. There was, I can't find it.
Yeah.
Do we need to redo that? There's other town lands that are being hayed. By the on which is an agreement needs to be had with the town.
Right. So we had one, and I explained to Amy, so we had one, it's obviously lapsed because that was when Heather was here, so I think we just go through and look at which ones are viable in terms of for hay processing and come up with a new lease and do an RFP and go from there. But we do need to look at the structure of the lease. So, and then come up with which ones are actually on that lease. So.
And I don't know if there's any value or if it's even possible to say if, Dan can presume, if he's haying Newtown, can he every other year in particular, pay attention to chopping back the edge?
Yep.
Which he may not be haying, but, the roses and all that stuff is just gone.
He also, I know he receipts that periodically up
Right.
there.
Yeah.
So that,
So I think if you have a
that's pretty
schedule
good
of
expense.
Yeah,
what,
you
yeah,
spend all
but
that,
certainly the
get an idea of what's
fertilizer's
going on.
super expensive.
So we know.
Okay.
Okay.
And then sort of the ditto, the same for mowing, is I'm trying to get a handle on who is mowing what. Nobody said they mowed Morgan, but I went out there this weekend and Morgan's been mowed.
Yeah.
So I don't know. The mowing fairy went out there. Do you know who?
The highway department.
The highway did it. Do you know who? They just kind of
Send them a
got
thank you.
I-
around to it. Were
Yeah.
your brothers just wandering around mowing things?
Most likely.
Wait, when the highway department mows, they're not mowing for hay.
No.
Right,
No,
no,
just
they're
mowing.
just
Just
mowing.
to
yeah.
keep
And
it
what do
open
they
field.
do with?
It's
No, you just
Leave
keep it
it.
tight, it just goes back.
Bag it?
No,
Or
no,
it just goes down, yeah.
just goes back. Yeah.
Yep,
Okay.
which is fine.
It
Alright.
keeps it rejuvenating itself.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's good.
Okay. Especially if we don't have to pay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Sarah, did you have any idea what format that agreement took, or?
It was a proper lease agreement, so, but I know that would have been.
Should have been in the fire.
No,
Yeah,
it's-
I
well,
can't find it. So maybe.
in a
just
week or
correct it
so,
to-
I can come back and I can help you go through
Okay.
the files, and
Good luck with
I don't
that.
think I have, yeah, okay.
And it might be something that ends up with town council, maybe,
Yeah, it was very
because there's gonna be other properties.
short and sweet, I mean, it's not,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I don't wanna poke this too much, but.
Yeah, no, I think that's fine, yep.
It's
Okay.
become an issue because, I think I mentioned, there's an argument over at Cooper about mowing and boulders and trails and. I keep telling
The
them it's not conservation
season's
land.
almost season's almost over, so I think it's a good time to do it,
Yeah.
so.
But that is town, that's town, Cooper is town, right? Not
Correct.
But not conservation, yeah.
Correct.
Okay, and then Newtown is conservation.
Right.
Correct.
So that's the only
And
one.
Yap,
Right.
Yeah.
he does Yap and Newtown Hill.
Parcel D was conservation.
No, he doesn't do mowing.
Yeah, I think it'd be good just to get a checklist, and we can know who's doing what, especially
Mhm.
Yeah.
Andrew's gonna keep doing it.
All right.
What is SVT REFP?
RFP.
That goes, oh wait, here's the.
Sudbury Valley Trustees.
So,
So they have Sudbury Valley Trustees has two AmeriCorps people working for them. And every year they put out an RFP if you want 120 of their hours on a project. I think a couple of years ago, they worked on some of the trail mapping for the trust, which never got completed, but. So I was thinking of putting in for helping pulling all this mowing stuff together, coming up with kind of BMPs, not for haying in particular, but for mowing, what's best for pollinators, what's best for the birds. Do some outreach to private entities if there's somebody out there who has a field and would like to mow it to better effect.
so Amy, I discussed this a little bit earlier, I read through this, I thought it's a really good statement of the program and what our goals are. I just had a couple comments, which I'm happy to share with you. When we talk about, it's specific to meadows, and so, I mean, meadows and fields, I guess we'll use that simultaneously. But I want to make sure that we're supporting the agricultural really background of our town, and make sure that we've got someone has made, either in the past or present mode, to be able to add content to this in terms of the goals. And I want to make sure that when we reach out to the farmers or the hayers, that we're getting input of what the cost of fertilizers, expenses. So if we make it cumbersome for the farmer to mow it, and they're putting money into fertilizer or cutting things back, then we're going to have to pay someone to mow it. So to kind of learn what that balance is, I don't want to go full throttle, that we're, kind of trying to do away with the farmer and just find that balance. So I just have my notes that I'm happy to submit, although they're a little scratched. So I support the process. I think 120 hours is great. And as always with Meadows, it says public and private. We want to make sure that we set up goals so when they talk to a private person that it's not invasive of their privacy.
Yeah, and I think it would really just be an outreach, and if they want to come to a meeting, you know,
Yeah.
we'd have an information meeting or something like
Yeah.
that.
I would like to have them do some research on what is poisonous plants when they're doing this,
Yeah, because that could be part of it
What
too.
is poisonous?
so that you know.
Oh.
Yeah, we looked into that. Daisy.
Yeah, food grain daisy, try goldenrod too. That's another one that is poisonous.
Some poison
Really?
too.
Yes.
Okay.
What is the update on 6 Cottage Way?
Oh, I thought we were actually already
Yeah, we
past this point, and the DEP had issued the superseding, I guess they hadn't formally issued the superseding order, so now they have, upholding the order conditions. Nothing has happened on the town bylaw
Yeah.
piece of it yet, but that might move ahead. At some point, they made, a minor change in either the septic, some change, so they are gonna have to come back and get the plans reapproved. DEP has, so now you would just need to do it under the bylaw piece of things.
Okay.
So.
But they upheld what we
Yes, So
set
I
out in
am-
the first place.
relying 100% on the town council to tell me exactly what to say and when to do it, so.
Okay, cool.
Okay. Continued public hearing notice of intent, 9 Air Road, U43-3-0, Mass DEP file number 204-898, construction of 2 driveways and 3 houses with utility connections.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Again, Greg Roy with Ducharme and Dillis, and I'm here with Dan Wells this evening from Goddard Consulting, also a consultant on the project. Just want to give you an update of where we've been in the last 2 weeks. We had a list of things to address from the last meeting, and then you asked us, one of those things was to stake the site so that you could conduct a site walk, which we did do with is it Carl?
Yeah,
Carl.
Carl was there last week. I think it was Wednesday or Thursday.
Thursday.
So that was taken care of, and Amy was present as well. The plan revisions that we did, I issued a revised set of plans last week along with a letter outlining the plan changes. There was a concern relative to runoff, getting off the site into and having potential impacts to the resource areas across the street. So we've actually added some stormwater areas at the toe of the slope. Those are shown here in blue. Those would be just shallow swale type feet. They would look a lot like a swale. The soils are sandy and gravelly out there, so there's a lot of infiltration that takes place there, so we would be able to mitigate any concerns with runoff with those features. You'd asked us to show snow storage, so we added the snow storage on the plan on both of the driveways, anticipating that plowing would occur. A plow truck would come from this direction and plow the apron over with probably the biggest stockpile area on this side of both of those driveways, and then a conventional road plow with banks on both sides of the driveways on both sides of the driveways going up. So we've showed those on there. And we've added as we explained last time, we did do some soil borings. We set some permanent monitoring wells actually on the property, so we've added those to the plan, and we've given you I included the monitoring boring logs in the submittal data that I provided to the board attached to the letter. And then we provided you some additional information relative to our request for the 50-foot waiver, work within the 50-foot waiver. And I've highlighted this plan a little bit as well, to try and help. So the gray hatching that I have here is the road, so the edge of the road pavement is right along here. The red line here is the limit of the 50-foot buffer zone. And then the black line, the black dash dot line, is the edge of the road right-of-way. So you can see that the 50-foot is completely contained within that road right-of-way. It varies between about 6 feet, 5 to 6 feet off the pavement, being that there's 6 feet of area within the 50-foot buffer right here to about 10 feet on this, 9 or 10 feet on this side. So that's really what you're looking at for the proposed impact within the 50. We don't have to do any disturbance in this section of the site, in the 50-foot, or this section of the site. It would just be for the driveways themselves, and then right in this area, for those, I know it was only Amy on the sidewalk, but if you're familiar with the site, in this area, the edge of the embankment comes right down to the edge of the pavement. There's not a lot of shoulder there, so.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, right in this spot. Down here, it's actually, there's a wider, a much wider shoulder down in this area, but right in there, there's not. So we will have to ease that shoulder to make that grading work in that area. But we have tried to minimize the amount of work that we are proposing within the 50-foot buffer. And again, I wanted to try and paint a picture, if you will, that there's no section along the frontage where we could access the site through our legal frontage without having to impact the 50-foot. There's no spot where the 50-foot sort of intersects the road pavement where we could use that. So that's it.
Are you able to offer any type of plantings that would benefit environmental?
We thought you might ask that.
Trying to live there.
So the areas I'm showing in green are the areas within the outer 50. So Mass DOT is not likely to allow us any plantings within their right-of-way.
Okay.
So we wouldn't be able to plant within the 50-foot.
It doesn't have to be restricted to
Okay,
50.
so these are the areas that we could revegetate basically between the right-of-way and the 100-foot buffer zone on the site. And those are the areas where, actually in here, we think we can actually save some of the existing trees. It would be, on this portion, we could revegetate, all of that we could revegetate, and all of this we could
Yeah,
revegetate.
most of it's all woods along there.
Yeah, it's
I don't
all,
think anything's gonna go
Correct.
in there. A
So
couple
trees-
questions. So are you asking, we have to ask Mass DOT for a variance for snow storage in that area?
No, because we're proposing it outside the right-of-way.
Okay. How did you choose the placement of your monitoring wells?
We did one in the back, we tried to just do one in the front of the site, one in the back of the site, really, just to try to get a representative. We actually did another boring over here as well. We didn't set a monitoring well, but front and back, basically.
why did you do those?
Yeah, because the front is not really the front. And the front is,
Well, we went as far, so the edge of the woods line is right in here, like that.
but the impact that
So-
you're gonna have is down gradient.
Yeah, but it's wooded, so we went as far forward as we could over here behind the existing shed structure right here. And then again, up here, there's a woods line that comes like that, so we tucked one in the back there.
Were you just looking for, like bedrock?
We wanted
Pebbles,
some
or you
really
trying to characterize-
groundwater. We wanted to make sure that we had a level groundwater table. It is indeed coincident with the wetland. That's pretty much what defines the groundwater table in the area. So we were looking at what the,
It wasn't perched.
right, it's a pretty sandy, gravelly area. And that's why we did the wells.
Okay. When you look at your snow storage, when we come back to where you're on such a voluminous road in terms of snow itself, don't you feel that by opening up those paths, that basically snow and everything from Air Road is just going to be pushed into there? So that while you're making accommodations for your snow storage, I feel as though every state plow or town plow that goes in there is gonna end up in there as well.
Well, there'll be a snowbank for sure along, just like you have at your driveway. And then you'd plow that, and that's why we have a larger area right here and right here for that. You'd plow that, you'd push that in this way.
Right, but you're gonna be taking on more from the highway than, say, an average street.
Yep.
So I think you have to make accommodations for that.
Right.
You know, if this was some random road, you know what I mean?
No, I get it. That's why we think we have enough area there for that.
And how big are those
addition.
areas?
This one's about 15 by 20, I would say. This one's the same.
And the depth?
As much as you need, as much as you need.
Well,
could
you
probably pack that,
obviously
but-
designed it, so tell us what you designed.
What do you mean by depth? It'll be a,
How much off the
it'd
road?
be a pile of, you mean depth of snow that you could accommodate, or, I'm not sure what you mean by
Do you mean
depth.
they're gonna dig it?
Right.
Oh, we're not digging it, we're not proposing to dig a,
Is it just a flat
for it.
area?
Yeah, it's just a
It's
wider
already
shoulder.
lower.
I thought you were catching stormwater
We are.
with it.
So
So
there's
how
a
are you
sw-
doing that without a swale?
There is a swale, so the swale is actually behind the snow storage area, it would come down, and then it would get into that swale.
Are those,
system on
is
both
that
sides.
infiltration trenches along the side of the driveways that the,
They would
it's
be-
good sandy gravel, water should go down through.
Yeah, it would be grass swale, so we'd be taking advantage of that, correct.
And when it freezes?
Would there be check dams in it to kind of hold it back so you don't get
We
a
could,
set of
yeah,
reasonable?
we certainly could,
Yeah.
if you thought it would help.
We considered trench drains at the bottom of the bottom of the driveways?
So that's something Mass Highway might ask us to do. If they did, we would do that. There's not really a place to discharge them. You'd have to cut a pipe across, you'd be running a pipe.
Across the
So they-
road to the swamp.
Yeah, so,
So,
Or
I think
could
it
they
could
go to
make
your
better.
swales?
so most of the pavement is going to these swales. There's a small apron that'd be lower than where that would be, that wouldn't be able to drain into that area. So it's really, it's kind of a limited area, pretty much defined to that part of the pavement that's within the road right away. So sometimes they ask us to do things like that, Mass Highway. We'll have to see what they come up with there, but
So what I was most struck by when I drove by numerous times when it was a little slower,
Yeah.
is that the opposite side is really what I call, it's a country drain. And so I'm concerned, like we mentioned in our last meeting, is that either the road, I feel as though, might be undercut below or above. And so I want to make sure that we're talking how we're preventing that on the adjacent side. And granted, it's probably not in your authority how to do that, but I feel as though we need to talk more critically about the wetlands on the other side.
So these swales are designed to make sure that we handle all the runoff from the site and infiltrate it before it even makes the pavement.
Well, you better hope it doesn't get under the road.
Well,
So you're sloping your driveway like this?
way.
Correct.
But
Or
So the
is it- or is
swales,
it- Okay.
and then the swales come into there, and it picks up the
So,
overlap
aren't you at
flow.
like a
So-
10% grade?
On this one, yes, for a short stretch, right, but it's crowned, the driveway's crowned.
The
I
existing
what-
driveway
what-
that we call
I don't understand, what you, I'm not understanding your
I
concern.
guess I'm just really thinking of
Well, it's
rains
gone,
coming
it's
down
going-
and snow
Yeah.
coming down. We're obviously not gonna plow up the
Without a single
road.
drain.
We're gonna plow down.
Catch
All
basins.
right, there's three
Going
people talking,
At
so
10%.
Hang on a sec, Michael, I just want to make sure I'm understanding what you're
why don't you
saying.
let Michael talk?
What's up to you?
The existing driveway that we have to get access from right now is 750 feet long right now, at between 8 and 10%. There's not a single drain on it. There's not a single swale. And to my knowledge, over the past 50 years, it's never undercut or undermined the road.
Is it in the riverfront?
Of course it is, it's
Yeah,
adjacent.
the end of it is.
The end of it is.
The whole entire thing is. I mean, it goes
It's a
diagonally
higher
up the road.
spot, though.
Yeah.
My recollection is that spot's higher,
Yeah, but it's going at an
and
angle
it's
up.
going at an
Well,
angle.
still at-
Parallel,
It's
parallel,
It's still
yeah, parallel
10%
to the
pitch down to the
road.
road, without a single drain, swale, or any water infiltration prior to getting to the toe of the slope right now.
So would you agree, though, that if you are taking something at an angle
No.
up or down a hill, it's, so why are there like switchbacks going
Water
up?
still goes downhill.
No, it
still goes
does.
from the top to the
But
bottom.
straight down. So I guess let me back up. I have concerns about the drainage heading out across with sheet flow. Perhaps there's more calculations that can be done, but I was reading the Massachusetts Stormwater Handbook, and then, some of the BMPs of vegetated filter strips. The removal efficiency of solids is 10% if it's 25 feet wide, and it's 45% if it's 50 feet wide.
And again, just to be clear.
So have you done modeling to?
We have done a HydroCAD model for this, but this does not, projects of 4 or fewer residential homes do not.
But you're within the 50-foot buffer, and it's our responsibility to make sure the water that you are diverting within the 50. So the
Yeah.
whole reason it's protected
Yeah.
is so that we have the conversation about how we can protect the water that's discharging into the 50 is not
Well,
going to
the-
sheet flow across the road.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's going to or not.
Okay,
I'm
I get
asking
it.
you.
I
These
don't know
are
what.
things this is.
Yeah, well, I'm
part of
telling
what
you,
we need to know.
that's why the swale is upgrading to the 50-foot buffer. So we've designed this to intercept the runoff before it gets to the 50-foot buffer.
Okay, and so based on the table of stormwater BMPs, your removal efficiency
Yeah.
is like 10% at 25 feet wide.
Well, we don't
So-
have a filter strip BMP. We have a grass swale.
Okay.
And then we
So
have an
what
infiltration.
efficiency is that?
A grass swale would be 25.
Grass channels, 50, if combined with sediment forebay or equivalent.
Right. I think you'd find a grass swale would be 25, and then you discharge it. We are putting some check dams.
So that's a 4-bed?
Well, we have a check dam in here, so we're treating this entrance, the entrances from these swales as 4 bays, and then it would spill in and infiltrate in the rest of that swale area. So you can see we have this area right here is a check dam, so it generates a 4 bay in that area. Same thing right here, right there, and right there. So you'd have a grass swale to a sediment 4 bay, and then an infiltration area. So you'd actually be getting your 80% TSS there by Massachusetts Stormwater Management guidelines. I mean, I can certainly provide you that documentation, but
So you have
we didn't.
Like an analysis?
Well, I can't. This isn't a subject to stormwater management. That's why you don't have it.
You are here because you want a waiver for the 50.
No, we're here because we
We're
want
expressing
to.
our concerns about specifically.
I'm not trying to
contribution.
argue. I'm not trying to.
I'm trying to help you help yourselves so you can
Yeah.
give us the information we are requesting.
Okay, so what
So
are you
you're-
requesting specifically, I guess?
The driveways are discharging water via sheet flow, recognizing that you have some engineering BMPs in there. You're not gonna 100% capture the sheet flow, so what water is entering the 50? How do we know it's not gonna sheet flow across the road? We can't just take your word for it, we need substantiation of that. That road is already undermined on the other side because the wetlands are right up against it. So this is the reason the bylaws and the regulations are in place, is to have these conversations. And so perhaps you don't have to due to the size of your project, but from a technical standpoint, we need you to be able to answer the question about the contributions without.
I just did. I don't know how else I can tell you that, so we've put that there. It's catching the runoff from, this point up to the middle of the road, down to that point. So we're probably losing, like I told you, the apron, like this area, is gonna, the rest of this paved area, all of the points we're disturbing, upgrading that is going into that swale area.
Okay.
So I'm not sure
Do you
how
have
I can.
calculations? I do.
I do have
Those are
them.
submitted?
They're not submitted to you, but we can certainly submit them if that would help you. They're HydroCAD calculations. We can certainly submit that to you if you find it helpful.
Are you using the Atlas 14 stormwater, which is more
I can, if you'd like to. I'm using the sort of
the
what's.
bulletin from 1971?
Well, we're using what
Bulletin
the
71.
regulations require currently, but if you'd like us to look at a different storm event, we certainly could, but.
I'm just looking for realistic conditions, because nobody wants the driveway undermined.
I get
Nobody wants
it.
the road undermined.
I get it.
And we're,
Yep.
we're having a conversation.
I'm trying to, I don't know if I'm making myself clear, I guess that's what my frustration is. That's why we added those, was to address that concern that you raised last
Yeah.
time. So I hope you you can see that we were certainly.
Yes, I recognize that
Attempting to
those
be
are
responsive
added.
to that, yeah.
Yep, no, I agree, yes.
Okay.
You were responsive,
Moving
you
in the right
added, you're
direction.
moving forward.
Yeah, I-
We still have questions.
Okay, that's fair.
Anybody else have questions?
Do you have any planting plans for the area you said you're gonna revegetate?
We don't, we didn't have that prepared this evening. We certainly can prepare one for you. We thought that perhaps we just have a discussion point on that with you this evening and see, I'm getting some head nods on that, I guess, from the commission that that's an important
Yeah, we
point.
usually have planting plans. And I guess part of it is dependent on what you're removing. So I got the sense that I wasn't able to look at the site directly, but there's woods, people said?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right there?
It's
So
wooded-
maybe
wooded slope.
some replacement in kind,
Mhm.
Like
adding
oak.
native
Native.
species.
It's mainly oak.
Hardwoods.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's what you would expect, and
Because
maybe
you're gonna have some pretty
pollinator.
steep banks.
Yeah, are you taking those banks out?
Yeah, how much material is coming out of, is there some sort of, what's the net? Is it a cut?
It's a cut, for sure, yeah.
Do you know how much?
I don't have that for you. I mean, it's quite a bit. We're taking that down quite a bit to get those slopes to work in those driveways.
And to get the swales in.
Mhm.
to cut the- Yeah.
Yeah.
So how
But
wide?
certainly, the slopes within the buffer zone will be less steep than what they are today, once it's done. And then, of course, as I mentioned, we can revegetate those areas. And we can certainly look to put together a planting plan for you on that.
So are you gonna live load or stockpile?
Live load.
And then, okay.
So it looks like the whole site is gonna be devegetated, right?
Right.
And then
And then portions, in stages. Starting from the left to the
Stages.
right.
So, but it's still, I mean, to answer Anna's question, it's all gonna be devegetated, just in stages.
Why would
Right,
you
for a clear
vegetate the
road.
face of the hill?
What's that?
Why would you devegetate the?
Because I have to go from the elevation of the road to get in.
Yeah,
Just
but I
gonna
mean,
strip
other
the
than
wall.
just the road part.
No, it's gonna put-
There's portions of it that we don't need to
Yeah, that's
vegetate
right.
towards the left side, towards the adjacent property where it's already, the toe of the slope's further back. You
Can
know,
you draw a boundary maybe for where you're gonna
it's
cut?
essentially,
That would
it's
be
essentially this area
Or
right here.
like
is
even
gonna
with
be-
your pointers. fine.
This is, the majority of this part right here is not gonna be devegetated right here. You know, going back this
Right.
way, we're gonna slope it from, that way back. But this area right here can be, trees, I think there's an
Outside
8 or
the-
10-foot elevation difference between right here and here. And then, and that can be,
Yeah, the limit of the proposed grading would be like this, and then down in there, so you can kind of,
yes.
Okay.
that.
And then
So-
you're cutting up top to get the houses in to make it flat?
correct.
To get this elevation from here to here, to make it so that you can get a driveway at less than 10%, yes.
So it's the delta?
But that's just the width, what, 24 feet or so probably you'd
Well,
cut in?
you still need it,
No.
you still need a.
You still gotta feather it out.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you still
but I'm
need an
just-
area for a yard and septic and that kind of thing as well, and,
Yeah, I mean, the biggest cuts are up front, so,
Is that construction access right there? So it's in and out?
that's gonna be
This
our
would be-
construction access, yes, to start with, yes.
which is why we have a slightly wider cross-section there. We have a slightly wider shoulder there, but ultimately, there would only be a 12-foot wide paved driveway through there.
So after you clear it, build, it'll be replaced as all grass, or?
Right.
Some of the slopes, I mean, some of it right here, we're gonna try to leave some of the trees in the back there and, going towards the slope. But, yeah, this will be raised right here, right in all
Yeah,
this
we'd be
area right here,
loaming-
yeah.
loaming and seeding, right.
Yep.
How many trees are being removed in the buffer zone? Which can't be replaced because you're putting stormwater features there?
Or the ones that wouldn't be, I'd have to get back to you on that.
Okay.
And
Yeah, you
this
just
area-
have to do
this-
it- you just
this
have to do
right
an
here, there's probably
inventory.
like 10 or 15 right here, and then 10 or 15 right there.
So when
Wait,
you-
where's the 100?
This
line right here.
Oh, that's
the red line, yeah, the red
Okay.
dash line.
So when they submit the drainage calcs, they can submit their inventory
Yeah.
of loss. Okay. So
Okay.
it sounds like there's three things that are still on the table.
Planting
Okay, cool.
plan.
Yeah, let's just summarize it. I want to make sure. Okay, planting plan, drainage calculations. And you want to...
Loss inventory. Okay. So our next meeting is,
And if you're
October
planning to
7th?
plant any trees on the property, account for those too.
Yeah.
Right, Still need a basis for a waiver.
right,
Over what I've given, I don't know what else they can give you.
A right to get to from this property to here is our basis for our waiver.
You have a driveway already?
No, we don't.
You bought yourself
No.
out of a driveway?
No, we didn't.
No, we
We
bought
don't
it,
have the access, direct access from this property to here.
Okay,
We have an easement.
sure, but wasn't there a
Nope.
driveway?
No, it's not our property.
Okay, but
DEP
when you...
regulations
Michael,
require
stop.
direct
Michael.
access
I'm trying to
from our
understand,
property.
I'm not trying to, I'm
maybe
trying to
maybe we should just submit it in writing.
I'm
so
trying
that
to
we don't-
understand.
we've gone to the planning board, we have an A&R approval with access from the road onto our property.
Okay, because my understanding, so we had just, I'm just trying to understand, and
I've
promise,
already-
I'm just
you've
trying.
already-
So my understanding of the property prior to now was that there was that angled, so we discussed that driveway, there was an angled driveway, and that was part of the property.
We don't have,
Okay, so that wasn't subdivided.
no.
Okay.
So we
So
have.
that's- I'm just trying to
we have
understand,
a
like,
shared-
It's a shared driveway.
We don't own the property, we have access.
So you have
to go-
access.
To go over it, but we don't have direct access from town,
Our frontage.
public right away.
Okay.
And you're only allowed
Why?
two houses on a shared driveway. So you have to have additional access points to do.
No, I'm not debating the
Right.
number of
Okay,
driveways
all
for
right, okay,
three
okay.
planned houses.
Okay.
I understand that. What I didn't understand was how there was only one,
I
or there
got
was
I got you.
a driveway up to the property, but there's no, that's the piece that I just didn't understand.
Okay, fair
Is
enough.
there any more questions?
Outside
Yep,
of
so
our-
we gotta
Better
keep
get
going.
moving.
I know you got a long agenda, but.
Yep, so we'll see you October, what's that?
9th.
21st. No,
Seventh.
October 7th.
October
Yeah.
7th.
Are you getting close with DOT or having you really
Yes.
start with DOT?
No, they've gotten back to us and we're in that drill, so.
Okay, thank you.
October 7th?
Yep,
Yep.
thank you, appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Public hearing, notice of intent, Healy Corner, 195 Tehadawon, R071-0, Mass DEP file number 204-899, construction of open space development, including tree clearing and grubbing, grading, construction of subdivision roadway, stormwater management system, septic system, multi-single family dwellings.
Good evening.
Hi.
First, we'd like to hand out to you these plans that are on the board. We have two full-size sets. We have a bunch of reduced sets, so you
Can I
have
get a
one right
reduced
in
set?
front of you. Excuse me?
Reduced. Thank you.
Reduced? Think there's enough to go all the way around? And then we can have a pretty full-size one. So, if you, on the 8.5 by 11 package, jump ahead to the next to the last page of that,
5 and 5?
the 8.5 by 11 piece, the written piece. Actually, throw it behind you, because you don't even want to read it, because I want you to look at plans while I tell you what it
All right,
says, and that'll be the better guy.
That's the third instruction I've gotten.
In 30
Maybe
seconds.
the fourth one will work.
Yeah, we'll try to get it right there. So, At our last meeting, you asked us to look at our alternatives analysis again. And so what we've done is we've tried to compile everything on the alternatives analysis so that it makes sense, and we've added to it and put a bunch in here. When GPR starts a project, as does any of our associates and colleagues out there, we've got rules and regulations from the town, from zoning and wetlands, Board of Health, and we have the client's desires and what their goals are with the property. If we're doing a subdivision, as you guys know, because you've had a number of them come through over the years, Littleton requires that a open space subdivision be looked at. And so when we submit a preliminary subdivision plan, we submit the preliminary subdivision as well as an open space development plan. This is the preliminary plan that was submitted. The blue outlines the edges of the wetland. The yellow outlines the edges of the 100-foot buffer and 50-foot buffer. There are 3 frontage lots over here, 2 reduced and 1 frontage. Fronting on Harwood Road. This is anticipated in a plan that it would have a common driveway that would come in. It would have to be in the buffer zone at this point to gain access to the last lot. There are 3 lots here that would have some work in the buffer zone, but staying outside the 50-foot zone. Off of Dennis Circle, there are a number of additional lots, and in here, there are 3 over here, there are 5 over here that would be accessed. Of those 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 would be accessed, potentially 6 via 2 common driveways, most likely. One that would come in here and access these 3, which would have access in buffer zone, but not in the 50-foot zone, and one which would come in here, which would have not only access in a 50-foot up in here because of the narrow, but a crossing to get to the back lot, whether it crossed over here or whether it crossed over here. Either way, there's a crossing to get to that back lot. These 3 frontage lots up here, the homes and such can be out of it, but all the land is comprised of lots or road, and so drainage areas in the lows would need to be necessary in the back in here somewhere. So we show stormwater management here, we show stormwater management here. Somewhere in here there need to be stormwater management. Obviously, an open space development, a conventional development, when you look at the whole parcel is used up, and there's no open space provided for the town, no CR as such. And that is part and parcel. One of the many reasons why the planning board desired that we use the preliminary plan, preliminary open space. This is the preliminary open space plan that was submitted when we submitted the preliminary plan. This removed the 3 lots over here and reduced that. So we went from 9 lots that dealt with buffer zone, with 3 shared driveways, with 3 driveways in buffer areas, and 1 crossing, down to 4 plus 3 to 7 lots that were in buffer zone, with 1 area in a 50-foot zone, and then 1 single crossing, and then 4 lots back here that would be in the buffer, but out of the 50-foot buffer. We have, like the other plan, we had several lots out front that are also in buffer zone. Homes proper don't necessarily need to be in the buffer, but there would have to be some drainage issues dealt with. This is the lowest point on the lot of the road. This is the low areas. And because we don't have the size of space on these lots, there would most likely be multiple basins to deal with that drainage in that format.
So where would the basins be?
In this scenario, the basins would most likely be in here and in here, and then something off in the side back in here. And this, when we did the preliminary plan, we hadn't had conversations with the town yet about reducing the width of this from a road to a common driveway. It was servicing 4 lots. What came out of that meeting was discussion to reduce development in here, try to reduce development along the budding lots in Harwood, and try to compress this and put more of the development up into this area. And that's exactly what we did when we submitted the definitive open space subdivision plan. We submitted this plan. Now we're at a point where we have 4 lots that have buffer zone, and you're gonna have to flip between this sheet and the next sheet just to see those, but I've got 2 lots here that have area in the back that are in the outer 50-foot buffer zone, and I have the 2 lots in the way back that are in the buffer. Now I have just a single access driveway and just a single crossing. We've been able to reduce it down to a common driveway, 12-foot width with widenings to 16 feet at 300-foot intervals. Allen block walls or Ready Rock block walls on either side of the crossing to minimize the impact in the wetland area itself. 3 of us were out on the site on, 4 of us were out on the site on Thursday, one of those days, end of last week. And you saw this area. We also went over and looked at these areas. This particular layout has the least amount of disturbance of the 3 plans that I've shown you. I've added in an additional access point or layout point on this, and unfortunately it's not highlighted on here, but it's a drive. Instead of coming here, it's a drive that comes in here, and it has a limit of disturbance associated with that. It's in the 50-foot all the way around through here because of the presence of the system and the presence of the detention
So that's
basin.
your alternative, or that's
This
what
is
your proposed?
No, this is our proposal is this.
Okay.
But I'm
So the
showing
one-
you another alternative
Okay, so
that
that's
we
what we-
did explore as we were going through this process. So that drive comes through here, and then it's in through here. Again, it comes into the 50-foot to get by the house site and everything to be out of the 50-foot zone, and then comes back into the 100-foot zone into the last house.
But there are portions within the 50 to do that stretch.
Mega portions within the 50, which is why, one of the reasons why we didn't go that way. It also has problems relative to the zoning for length of drive going that way, because it's kind of a roundabout approach, but it's a roundabout because it's going right around this wetland, and this is a cross slope for those that are out on the site. As we came back up here, contours are running in this direction, so this is a cross slope. When you're going perpendicular to the slope, you can limit your grading. When you're on flat land, you can limit your grading. When you're going across the slope, you've got to do a cut and fill, and you got to chase that down gradient slope. So unfortunately, this one puts us out in here into the 50-foot and narrow in here, and then back out wide as you're on the back side of the grading over in here, adjacent to the 50-foot. This parcel, this plan, which is refined from the one that was submitted with the preliminary plan, allows us to have roughly 30 acres of the 44 acres as open space, as restricted open space. It allows for a trail that exists running east-west on the south side of the property and on the north side of the property to get a new trailhead, a new connector, and a new trailhead and parking for here. It allows for the back portion of the property, the southernmost edge, to have or the westernmost edge, to have a north-south trail, which the Town Trails Committee has asked for the rights to connect between the properties on the east and the west of the overall parcel to make a connection to head over towards the train station and to loop additional trails in there. It establishes, with those conservation restrictions on its own, it's setting up so that that 30 acres of restricted land is in full intent and purpose in accordance with your wetland bylaw. It also establishes the equivalency or actual of 2 house dwellings in the low and moderate income bracket for the town that would be set up for this. So this one fully follows along with that. Now, your regulations, read them, I'm still having a hard time reading them because it says analysis of the least environmentally damaging practical alternative. As you're well aware of, under the Wetland Act, when you're dealing with a riverfront and you're doing an analysis, the language is similar yet very different, whereby when it says a practical and substantially equivalent economic alternative. We never did an alternative to here because it's not a practical alternative. Economically or not, but mostly economically, we've already followed through with the requests from public comments and the planning board comments to remove lots from here, and to put them into this area and to cluster. There's no more space here to cluster. In doing so, we created an open area that we were able to put the drainage in one major location, put the septic in a location, move the primary area furthest away from the wetlands, furthest away from a vernal pool that exists back here. And by eliminating these two lots, the two lots that are back here, that are shown here, are the two most valuable lots in the development. The ability of having these two lots totally and permanently restricted by conservation land, not only 30 plus or minus acres on this lot, but between the properties to the north and the south of this property, there's another 10 to 12 parcels that immediately adjut this or are a butter to this of restricted conservation land and open space land. So the value of these two lots outweigh many of the lots over there and allow for that to be clustered in that nature. And therefore, this alternative is not a practical alternative, and we wouldn't go down this road. I mean, the development wouldn't happen.
I may have missed this on the previous discussion. Were there discussions of trailheads and parkings? And can you just show us
Certainly.
where that would be?
Certainly.
And that would never access that 12-foot road going down to the other lots, correct?
It would never access.
So
the
cars would
12-foot.
never be coming down?
The cars would not, that's correct. So when you come in Dennis Circle, the proposed way, which comes in adjacent to the existing house on the right-hand side, it comes out into the field and then loops in cul-de-sacs to the middle of the field. There'd be parking right here for 3 spaces. There'd be a trail that comes on down, it's shown on the plan here, that comes down, crosses this driveway, and then goes across the back, not of these lots, but of the back of the meadow and into the woods and down that existing trail that's through the woods along the southern side, or southeastern side. We took it off of this plan. We had a nice little detail for over here. Right over here, I guess I can flip back to this one. I'm just gonna show it in general. Right over here, there is a proposal to come in to another 3 parking places to the trail that shows up on the other plans, comes on down through here and continues on down across this side. And these 3 parking spaces be up here. It was a requirement and a request of the planning board that these not back out onto Harwood Street or to Hadlon Street, but that they'd be actual drive.
So
off
where would
parking
you be in
spaces.
proximity to the habitat for the vernal, in terms of, I don't know where your
This is the
scales are?
vernal pool.
Right, but I'm just talking, like where the trail is,
The
in
trail,
terms
the
of
trail
habitat.
exists coming down like this.
How close would the trail come to?
Well, if that's 100 feet and that's 100 feet, it'd be over 200 feet away. And there is a trail that meanders across this way right now that's fairly close to the backside of that. It'd be your decision as to whether we keep it or it gets blocked off or what we want to do with it. So we've given you a updated, revised description of all of that. And, you know, as I say, there's There's 30 of the 44 acres that would have a conservation restriction. There's another 3.5 acres that would be restricted from development of the buildings. That's this parcel in here. This still shows the grading for the primary here. We're flipping that to here. And the drainage basin, and that's outside the 50-foot zone.
In the last meeting, we referenced some CR language. Did you have a chance to kind of look at any of the ones? And
We did,
thoughts on that?
and as I stated, the applicant is preparing one. I had hoped to have it from him by tonight. I'd asked for it, but I don't have it yet.
I think we need to see that.
Does it model something that we're familiar with, or are they doing something unique to Littleton?
I don't believe it's unique to Littleton at all. I believe it's something that you're familiar with. I know they've been working with NIF, and so.
EEA has a boilerplate.
What's that?
Executive Office of Environmental Affairs has a boilerplate, which I imagine this is gonna be pretty much boilerplate.
Yeah, it'll be a lot of the
Nothing's
boilerplate.
anything
Is that what we used at Kinghorn?
No,
That's different?
that was unique to that property.
Okay.
Well, it was based on the
Yeah,
boilerplate, but
but-
he added a bunch of the.
But it was
other stuff,
customized.
Yeah, I mean, we're not looking to have, some of them look to have farm structure, farm stands, some of them look to have a barn, some of them look to have different things. We're not looking for any of that. And we're gonna,
Logging?
excuse me?
Logging?
I know, I don't believe they're putting logging into it. I'd be very surprised if they are.
Because I think that's one question that we had was, of that 30 for the 48, in that CR, what were the values of the CR and what could be permitted?
Right.
Okay.
I'm still trying to get
Yeah, probably
still trying to look
a
at it.
baseline report,
it. Here, yeah.
That's,
post or
Existing. Baseline.
not stationing, yeah.
signs.
Yeah.
What was that? I'm sorry.
We're just talking about
I'm having a
signage
hard
and
time getting
things
it
like
out.
that.
What's that?
A baseline report eventually for the CR area.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
As well as bounds in the field.
Has there been an inventory done in that area of whether it's vegetation or habitat, or what the value of that CR area might be?
No.
Okay.
I mean, it's been delineated by Oxbow. Oxbow's been out there. Oxbow looked at the vernal pool, thinking it was on the site. Turns out it's off the site.
I thought it was on the border of the site.
No, it's actually.
I thought part of it was in the border, no? That was from the site walk, so perhaps.
Yeah, if you look at this right here, you know, it's really, if any of it's on the border, it's literally right on the border.
But that's in Oxbow's report?
Yes.
Okay.
Right, yeah. Okay. Yeah, on the site walk, it was like drawn farther out, so.
No, it was drawn there. We were standing right up in here,
Yeah,
looking down
I remember
at it.
that. Right,
Yep.
no, I remember that, and I remember agreeing it was far
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
reserve area.
Yeah, I mean, you're in a really reduced
But-
plan that was already at,
Yep.
I think, what's that? At an 80 scale plan, reduced down, so you're looking at like 160 scale.
I mean, I guess regardless of whose property it's on, it's still a vernal pool, and you
Right.
still need to
Still
protect
habitat.
it, so it's the
And-
100-foot habitat. And
Right,
the
and we're
whole nine.
staying away,
So, okay.
moving further. So I understand we still need to get you a CR. As soon as I have it, you have it.
We had questions on the crossing, the value of that culvert versus closed bottom, open bottom. 38 inches, maybe? Is that what
36
it
inches, is it, Mark?
36?
It's 36-inch culvert. We have it proposed to be embedded and then filled on the bottom, what, 4 or 6 inches? With earth and material. For those that were out on the sidewalk, it's not a real flow path, but we want to have equalization, and allow for water and critters that might be in that low area. They'll have the ability of going up and around as well. I mean, you're going to have pretty minimal traffic. It's going to be a driveway with 2 lots on it, we hope.
So the driveway is 12, and then the side's another 4 on each, or 2 on each?
Driveway's 12 with 2 on either side that'll have, vegetation over the top of it. But it'll have a base underneath it for emergency vehicles.
Did you do an inventory of tree take within the 50?
Nope.
That's a
No, like I said, we staked out that center line,
Right.
and we walked down it.
Yep.
There's some that could happen to one side or the other, but we did not, we're trying to do the least amount of disturbance in there as possible. There was some discussion in the field of a potential, I think Carl raised the idea of a potential of looking at replication being out here in the meadow, or some replication being out here in the meadow versus, here this shows it better, we're showing it here and here, potentially doing it on the meadow so that there's less disturbance in the
Right.
woods.
Right.
The crossing itself, where we're actually crossing, I think there was like zero vegetation. There was a downed tree, a big downed pine tree across it, or a couple of them that we all stepped over on it multiple times, going back and forth, but fortunately no one slipped and fell in the green moss. But,
Yeah, definitely, like, it's wooded, and so taking down a ton of trees to.
Meadows better. So the premise of the waiver is financial.
The premise of the waiver is both, we've prepared the least impact on the site that we feel is possible to have the property move forward, the project move forward well, in the method of a single-family home. When we were looking at this for the applicant, we were also looking at the senior housing projects, the senior housing zoning, which allows, as you know, for many more units.
And you
We
said
tried
two of
to
those?
keep it, what's that?
You said 2 units? That are gonna go to some,
Two would go to affordable, but the senior has a much higher density
Density.
build-out.
Yep.
And we felt that we wanted to stay with a single-family scenario. That was what the family decided. And I personally agree that it's a better use for the site. But from that standpoint, it's an issue, yes, of a financial, to take the development from the comments that we've received from the town and from the town board, planning board, of, clustering as much as possible into the open meadow area, to change the development from the initial layout that had homes clustered but in 2 different areas. It changes the economic viability of those properties, so we had to have 2 that help offset the, the smaller lots and the smaller units that would be in the field.
do you wanna take questions?
Anybody got any questions?
Yes. My name's Roger Osborne. I am in a butter. In Harwood. I'd like to point out a couple of things if possible, using lovely
Go ahead.
plans. They really are pretty good.
You got a lovely on your plans, by the way.
I noticed that. I didn't make note of it, but maybe Mark
And
did.
if I,
Yeah, no,
relate
you
this
feel
a
free to
little bit-
flip.
Please, you may do anything you like, Roger.
Oh, I wouldn't go that far.
Well, okay.
If I were you, but, okay. Couple of things, the no inventory of flora and fauna in the area is a little disquieting, but, I know you
It's
guys are in charge
requested
of
though,
that. so-
yeah, we did
Okay.
request it.
My big concern, knowing the topography here, is drainage. It's a serious concern. Yes, I know perks were done here and there, but I'm very familiar with this land. And there are a few sort of hilly areas in Littleton. One terrific one on New Estate Road is a moraine. You can't keep a puddle in that area. Drains extremely well. This is not a moraine. The land under here is mostly ledge with a top layer of humus effectively on top of that. So there are pockets where you will get drainage, but they're only pockets. And I told you in the last meeting that we put in a pool. That was a great adventure, mostly on the excavation side. When the excavating contractor started digging, he called me up, I don't know, an hour into the job or something.
Right, you referenced that at the last meeting.
Right.
So if you wanna
Would you go
make
forward,
newer
please?
comments, that'd be great.
Right, but I did not mention at that time Second thing he ran into, other than the forest floor going too deep, so that there was no way to have a stable base. So we took out 300 yards of material and put it in the front yard. But while doing that, we ran into, not far below the surface, ledge. And it's fairly common knowledge, I guess, from the people who have tried to work in that area, tried to develop in that area, that it's ledge. And when we see effectively 15 units of housing build a septic system, which I assume these are step trenches or step drains or something here,
Of that sort.
something like that, okay. When we're putting that much effluence into this area that is known to have poor drainage, despite what might have been a favorable perk or two, it scares the crap out of me, so to speak. It really does. I mean, we're here, or Greg and Martha live here. This is going to be a problem. This is not going to work well. I would love to see a study on exactly how much discharge can be handled over years, because that's what we're talking about, and not a one afternoon perk test, to see if this is in fact viable, and I doubt very much that it is.
Just a point of question, planning board's doing a third-party review on this, specific to drainage, and then, okay. I just want to make sure someone's covering.
Septic, though?
Mhm.
That would be Board of Health.
The septic gets reviewed by the Board of Health, and I don't know to what extent by the third party. They just sent over their comments this evening, and I haven't even opened the email.
But was that requested to be done in terms of the review?
In terms of that review, no. In terms of the review of what we've done out there.
Stormwater and traffic were the two big ones, I think, that
Yeah.
Big Green's looking at.
Yeah, I think that's correct. We did upwards of 15 perks in that area right alone, which meant that there was at least 15 deep holes there as well. There was no ledge encountered within the 10-foot that we have to dig them. We did encounter ledge in some of the areas out here, but not in the areas through here, and not in the areas through here. And there were many more perks and deep holes done
Where did
out through
you,
here.
your back was in the way,
I'm sorry.
where did you see ledge?
With two isolated lots, two back lots.
We hit ledge in these holes back here. Yeah, but we had adequate depth to do Title V testing. But we hit ledge like down at like 8 and 9, 10 feet.
Would those lots also go to the?
Yes.
What was the depth that you testing down? That was
I'm sorry, up front here, 10 foot in excess.
Did you go deeper anywhere else?
We went deeper throughout the whole area up and through here. And we try to go down, the requirement is to do 10 feet. We shoot for a 10-foot hole. And typically, when we're doing that many, we stop in and around 10 feet. Some of them go 11, some of them go to 12. But typically, we stop in right around 10 feet.
Is that even for a shared system?
Yep. For a regular system, there is 4 test pits that are required, 2 in the primary and 2 in the reserve, and a perk in each. What we've done here on this area here is about at least 15 deep holes and perks throughout this area, because both the Board of Health and our office wanted to ensure that we had the consistent soil. We had the same type soil testing that was done up in here, the same type soil testing that was done down here. And we actually have good perks down here on the point that I was showing you on the other sheet, but we don't have as deep of holes down here.
How far away is the wetlands to that edge of the fill on the back corner of the?
Here?
Yeah, if you go all the way to the toe of that slope
So if
there.
you go here, that's probably, well, this is the 50 foot, so probably, and this is the 100, so 60, 65 feet in that corner. Again, this grading is shown here. We've chosen to flip-flop the primary to out front, so the primary would be out front here, and this would just be reserved, it'd be left as woods.
Is it, so it's not being excavated at the present time?
No.
Okay.
And it wouldn't be.
Hopefully.
Well, as we've discussed in the field, and as you guys know, because you have multiple upgrades come before you all the time, they typically go back in the area where the primary is. Title V requires that we have an area reserved, that nothing can go in that space.
those who, I can't believe you would not be familiar with the area, but for those who are not familiar with the area, the grade goes up to, this is really the top of the hill here, right? And the soil and all that. And as we go down, there are outcroppings that can be seen right about here. That's not a problem from the street view. There are also outcroppings right about here, and this is where we ran into ledge at about 4 feet. So, and all we could do is bring in a wrecking ball and break the pieces up and eventually get down far enough that we have the depth we needed.
Okay.
Also, a couple of springs ago,
Yeah.
right here, we had ducks swimming. Again, I'm not a hydrologist or a geologist, but when I see ducks swimming, I question the drainage. I don't know, it's a sort of a natural question.
So a pond formed right at the base of
Yeah.
that?
I mean, I wouldn't call it a vernal pool because while the salamanders do crawl into the yard and the wood frogs are everywhere, they typically don't live there. And it takes a fairly wet spring for that to get wet. You know, this is not your classic vernal pool, never would be. But it does go to illustrate that the drainage is suspect. I would like to, well, I know a lot of tests have been done and I appreciate that, I really do. But I still have grave concerns for this much effluence being supported by this little area, especially this close to existing dwellings. It just seems unwise. I would worry about the total impact of this rather than sort of specific individual impacts.
Then we'd be better off to have some septic, smaller septic systems in some, not all of
I
it
know I'm
go
not
into
supposed to
the
talk to you, but
drainage.
thanks.
You're welcome to talk to me. There's no reason you can't.
Is your primary outside the 100-foot?
Yes.
It looks like it is.
Yep.
Or it looks like the reserve is within the 100.
The reserve, yeah. Part of the reserve.
Is there any more questions? We've got more meeting to take care of tonight.
How do I schedule, I know there's some commissioners, I haven't had a chance to go out, so.
You got my number. Give me a buzz.
Okay.
Anybody else who wants to go to the site, give me a yell.
Okay.
The Elford Trail is flagged, the crossing's flagged.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm just wondering if a few geoprobe boreholes might make sense in that area.
Geoprobe boreholes in which area?
Find your ledge.
Why for?
If there's a ledge concern.
There's not a ledge concern from the standpoint of the system design. When we design the system, anything over 2,000 gallons a day has to have mounting analysis done. We'll be doing a mounting analysis from that standpoint.
You will be doing, or
We
you
will.
have done?
We will.
Oh, you will be doing,
I
okay.
think what would be important
But
where
it's-
the reserve is within the buffer,
Yeah.
that and where we're working on a third-party review process now to perhaps ask them to look at that area on behalf of conservation, to kind of look at those soils, because I know we haven't had a chance to look at
Sure.
that, so.
I mean, Jim
just
Griffey
based
will be
because
looking
it's-
at it as well, and I know he's given his comments to the board.
Okay. But that would be my request if the commission supports that.
Right. Well, and it's clearly an outstanding question that we're running into. is,
We
you know,
need to get
substantiate-
moving. Any
Yeah, we
more?
talked
So we have to,
I-
so
I
we're
have
we're
one-
tasking, yep, go
I have
ahead.
one thing. If you're, our regs really don't say anything about economics.
I know they don't.
However, if you're using an economic argument for, damaging practicable alternative, we need to see an economic analysis, like, to prove your case that without those homes going into through the 50, that you would not be able to build. We'd need to see that and justify it in order for us to have the waiver.
Can I ask one on a positive side? That your CR has value, and that's why I think of that 30 acres that is going to be under a CR, it would be good to get some type of inventory so you can show that for your waiver as well.
Okay.
So while you're looking at a negative and a positive, there's an opportunity that they may cross each other out. But I think we would want to see the value of the CR,
And I
the
think-
integrity of that habitat.
I think think in the CR.
Excuse me one second, Jim, I just want to make sure I understand. You want an inventory of the value of the habitat, not necessarily an inventory of the plant material. You
Well,
wanna know
I
what's-
think
you want-
obviously someone's
From-
going to be able to look at.
From Oxbow. type
Exactly,
thing.
they're gonna be able to say,
Exactly.
this is forested, this is upland, this is
Right.
what have you.
Yep.
To be able to say, and we recognize it's approximate, but there's obviously
Yep.
value.
Right.
But I think it needs to be illustrated.
I'm sorry, Jim, go ahead.
I was gonna say in the CR, I would like to see some sort of a forest management type situation.
Right, either whether excluded or partial or something, but we just don't have the CR yet.
No, but I'm just
And
saying,
that
because you
usually
may
is
at
in the
some
boilerplate.
point,
You can strike or not, but it's in the boilerplate, I think.
you may need at some point, somebody may have to
Review.
manage it somewhat, down the 10 years, 20 years from now.
And who would manage that? Would it be the two?
It would be
owner?
allowed, I guess that's what I'm asking.
Whether or not it would be allowed, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you have a preference?
We'd want to see it first,
Okay.
to see what the use is.
And then talking about the tree inventory that was separate from the CR, that would be the tree inventory within the 50 that would need to be removed. like
Okay.
crossing. So that's important from the conversation about the resources that have impacted, so weigh the different components of the project.
But I do like the idea of moving the replication up into the meadow and not down by the
Yeah,
crossing.
Okay.
taking down
But I would-
3 times the trees to.
I totally agree.
That's crazy.
That's, as I mentioned when we were out there,
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we're going
Okay.
to go ahead and continue. Our next meeting is on October 10th. If you can, if you have data to submit it days before the meeting,
I definitely will.
that way, and it's,
After we walked the site, I was kind of handcuffed on timing.
okay. All right,
Okay,
all right, thank you.
Okay. Thanks, have a good evening.
public hearing, notice of intent, 49 Manawanaki Trail, U47-450, Mass DEP file number 204, hasn't been finished. Demolition of an existing house and construction of a new single-family house.
Hello everyone, my name is Dan Carr from Stamsky & McNary. This is Bill Simmons, also from Stamsky. I've just got some pictures here of the yard at 49 Manawanaki. Behind the house, thank you.
That's one section. We've got all that.
So, to give you an overview of the site, there's an existing single-family home. There's an existing paved driveway. There's several stone retaining walls along the slope as the yard goes down towards Lake Manawanaki. The pictures show that the walls are kind of in disrepair, but the focus of this project is to replace the single-family house, and the proposed house very much matches the existing footprint of the house, of the existing house. They were proposing to replace the deck, but keep the same pier, same sonotube foundation that the deck currently has.
Is it currently on a slab, or how is it supported, the house?
The house is, I believe it's on a slab. Yeah.
The slab, the house has no footing and no foundation, so it's on a thickened slab.
And what, I don't see where the lake, okay, so that's the lake.
Yep, it's basically right along the property line, the bank.
And so this is the 50.
This is the 50, yep, sorry.
Yikes.
50 and the 100 is the dotted.
Okay.
And so we're keeping the same setbacks as existing with the proposed house. And the owner would also like to,
Is the big tree getting removed?
no trees are to be removed.
Okay.
That's the goal.
Septic being,
Staying, existing.
Keeping the slab, building on top of
you're
the
using the
slab.
existing slab.
Replacing it. Because we, the footing.
There's no footing.
So with a shallow foundation. Footings.
It looked like in the paperwork, the square footage of the house was increasing within the 50? Is that
Yes.
a typo, or is that, okay.
Let me show
You
you.
said it was,
Yes, it's very,
Just
very
wanted to
close, but it's
clarify.
not exactly the same.
okay.
I've got, let's see.
Because we would view this as new construction if you're replacing the foundation as well.
So this is the proposed plot plan, and the red line is the existing outline. So there's a concrete patio in this corner here that they're proposing to make the house. So it's both impervious. So this is the existing, you can see that little square there, corner off the house is the concrete patio.
So, but are you losing this right there? Is that changing?
And this is the proposed, so the red is the existing, so there's an added
So the
amount of
red
house.
is the existing, okay.
Yes. And so,
So you're adding in 3 spots.
yeah, and we're taking away here. This is currently a house there that they want to knock off a section for deck.
So you're
there.
swapping left to right,
Basically.
virtually. And so when you look
90
at
square
the,
feet, I think was the delta.
90 square feet is the
Okay.
change, yeah.
and where is that is that in the 50? Where's your 50 foot on the?
The 50 is not shown on this plan, but you can see it here.
So is the add is out of the 50,
There is a little bit of add in here just because of that concrete patio.
but you're swapping?
No, there's no swamp.
We're switching from patio to house, basically.
Right.
Can I see that one?
And we're proposing to expand the driveway slightly and add a catch basin that will drain to a level spreader.
Have you
Gravel.
looked at reducing the amount of impervious in the 50?
So we're not increasing it.
Yeah.
You said by 90 feet.
square
Well,
So
it's
that's-
from patio to house, so it's impervious to impervious. It's just,
already concrete.
Yeah.
This is swapping for that.
But have you looked at reducing the amount of impervious in 50?
I
Yes,
I don't think the
here.
applicant wants to reduce what is existing there now.
So these don't.
I might say
These are out of the
These
50.
cancel out.
I'm
Is what I'm
doing the
saying. Where's the
architect
cancel
working on the
out?
house.
Like right around this.
Yeah.
So what we're trying to do is, they would like to age in place, single level living. Currently the kitchen's on the leg level, the bedrooms are the upper level. And so we need the 1,400 square feet on a single level to really to have single level living. So we really can't reduce the footprint.
Well, is there a way to shift it back or shift it to the side?
Well, we are within, I think, 5 feet of the north setback. We are within 25 feet of the street setback, so we're over 5 feet. And we're within 20 feet of the leaching field, 10 feet of the septic tank. So we are really pinned in
50
every
foot wide.
location. And actually, when we just had the,
Already actually closer to the street than it should be.
All right, well, what we need for the waiver, if you're building, since you're building newly in the waiver area of the 50-foot no disturb, we've got to have that kind of justification in the waiver. There's no other choice. You know, when you look at alternatives analysis,
But
we
I
can
think,
only
Anna,
do
when,
that.
and that's why we're looking at these other plans, I think when you look at it, the swap, because a lot of the changes are out of the first 50.
Right.
They're out of that waiver area that, I think when you look at these, so what would have been helpful is on this one to have your 50-foot on this one, because you'll find that all of these changes are already they're in the second 50. So when you look at this is the 50-foot. You'll see that only this portion here, and they're swapping.
well, I realize that, but regardless, they're building in the 50 and they have to have an alternatives analysis that shows that this is the only way that you can build on this property, if you build in the 50. That's how we've got to consistently apply the waiver process for everybody.
Okay.
Because it's new construction.
It's new construction.
If you were remodeling,
So we need to leave there in order to have it consistent considered not new construction?
I think the challenge is it's your
slab.
footing and your slab. The challenge is,
But there are no footings. So it's
The
kind of
slab.
ridiculous to build a house with no footings, don't you think?
Well, regardless, if it's totally new, including removing the present slab and building an entirely new house, it's a new construction.
Well, but if you're building a house and you use a slab with no footings, does that make sense?
She's not arguing that it doesn't
No.
make sense, she's just saying that in order, so their kind of stuff, they need to consider it as a new house. And as such, we need to explain why we couldn't build it anywhere else and why we need this extra 90 square feet.
Right. Not even just the 90 square feet, but everything in the 50.
Well, it's not, I don't think it's 90, is that concrete patio area, your 90 square feet, or is it everything? Because everything's 90, right? So the patio is smaller.
Right.
Is it,
I think the patio is 11 by 7.
so, but for impervious, you're really not increasing anything in the 50.
Right.
Right.
But that really is moot, because it's new
Yeah,
construction.
no, I agree. I'm not disagreeing with you, Anna, but
It's, what we would
the-
focus on is, can you reduce the amount in the 50 at all, at this point? Because that's what
when you're
we
cutting,
want,
can
an
you cut
environmental
back a little
benefit.
bit more?
We're looking for an environmental benefit for your building in the 50, so whether you can, manipulate the house a little bit to reduce the amount impervious in the 50, because that's our ultimate goal, is to have the area of the 50.
We're reducing the amount of impervious in the 100. So currently, there's a asphalt driveway that will be coming out and being replaced.
But our focus is on the 50 because it's the no disturb area, and also because that's critical area for preservation of wetlands and waterways.
So we're not
There's-
making anything any worse than it is now. It's the same as it is.
And we appreciate that you're removing others that are within the 100, but
Yes.
what the focus is under the new construction is that, really that 0 to 50. So, and I think that's where we would defer to your engineer to see if there is a way to potentially
So we can't move the house in any other direction.
Okay.
Okay, that's what you'd have to present in your waiver, is that there's no other way that you could design the house that would reduce the amount in the 50.
And you would say because you would impact septic or setbacks or things like that, you just have to spell that out in the
Or
waiver.
the intent to have
So we have not
one-story
presented a
living.
waiver at this moment that presents that.
Okay, you
Is
would
that
have to
correct?
present a waiver, and submit a
We have not,
waiver.
I'm asking our engineer, we've not.
We have a waiver, but it doesn't list out the alternatives.
And is there any other benefit that you offer, environmental benefit from building in the 50?
But they could
To
substantiate
compensate?
that through their vegetation and because they're adding drainage, like when we've dealt on others with that. So there's potential for the waiver to be successful.
Right.
I'm
I'm sorry, I didn't hear about vegetation.
Yep, no, there's another.
Improving site drainage,
Site
improving
drainage,
stormwater,
that he
doing
referenced
native-
when he first started.
native
Okay.
plantings.
That is a
Increased over
Reducing
what's
lawn.
present?
Like
Existing
capturing some of the roof drainage.
We're capturing driveway drainage.
Yep.
But not roof.
Currently, the driveway has a catch basin at the lowest spot, which goes into a pipe that goes out onto the surface of the yard. And this would now have a dry well instead.
Right. So that's an
Infiltrated.
advantage.
Yep, that's an
So that
advantage.
containment is an advantage in your waiver. And then you would look at potentially naturalizing a little bit more of the front of the yard through vegetation. Amy, what is the number of the house that was successful with that steep slope?
80, oh,
It was
it
Madawaska.
wasn't 83, it was the one you and I went to.
Oh,
Is that the one
yeah, we all
that
went to it, I just can't remember, it was steep, and there was
Yeah,
two
that
levels.
That was off of Green Needles. Look out that way.
But through vegetation, you can also enhance that waiver as well.
We'd be looking for pollinator enhancements and.
There is a lot of vegetation.
But you want vegetation that has value for species, so.
Wildlife.
Wildlife, like butterflies,
Bees.
certainly the pollinators, bees. But perhaps you have an opportunity to look at that and then maybe talk to Amy and she could show you what an example of some of those
Yeah,
plantings would be.
There have been 2 properties recently on the same lake. The house is not meeting the age of the
Building this summer.
Yeah, so there've been at least 2 that are lakefront who have gone through this.
22.
So
And
save
theirs
yourself
is
some time and effort.
staged, if that's the same
Yeah,
one.
it's
Yeah.
higher.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep, very steep,
Yeah,
Very
very steep. But they were successful in their waiver.
yeah, I see what you mean.
Yep.
Is there any other work going on? You said those walls are irreparable. Are you doing any further work closer to the water?
So the walls will just be replaced in kind.
Fixed.
And, yeah, fixed.
Fixed,
And
yeah.
the stairs, there's a staircase that goes down to.
Yeah, they're beautiful walls.
Yeah,
Nice
and
trees,
the
too.
stairway is a wooden stairway which is weathered and worn.
Yeah,
We would
that-
just be replacing it with
Yeah.
the same sort of thing.
Okay. My encouragement would be to extend, if you could do that for the next meeting.
Yes, we request a continuation.
October
October 7th.
7th.
Oh,
Yep, to extend.
I see.
Okay.
All right.
So if you have questions on the waiver. Okay.
So are there other things that we should bring?
I think if you could work on your waiver, have your
Yep.
detail of your drainage, make sure that in your notice you talk about the things that you're repairing as well, so it's in-depth.
Like why you can't move the house back, like for example, it's cut into the side of a slope, and so it would
Yeah,
be,
we've got the front
So
setback.
like that,
Your
you're setting in all your
setbacks, your
setbacks.
So we've got-
So we just need that
We've got
information
two
in one
setbacks
place.
and then we're also pinned by the septic.
Right.
Yep, so all of that needs to be
Yep.
just included. It
So I
needs
think
to
if
be
you had
part
that
of the
narrative, you'd be
package.
good.
Yep.
Okay.
Great. Any questions?
Questions?
Good.
Okay.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, thank you.
Public hearing, notice of intent, lot 13 Chestnut Lane, R1617, Mass TV file number is 204XX. Refiling for a new house, driveway, well, and associated grading. Somebody want to speak to that? Never goes away.
Still need to deal with the
Took the
road,
words right out of my mouth.
detention area at some point.
I do have individual plans and everything,
Colors,
and colors.
good. Share this one.
You guys are butters, you can come up and look.
I'll get my own.
I'll share it, makes sense to see doing maps with you.
For everybody, all colors.
All colored.
Wow.
Well, my daughter works as my bookkeeper, office manager, now colorer. For the record, Jeff Hannaford, representing the applicant for Lot 13, or number 7 Chestnut Lane. Unbeknownst to us, the original notice of intent had expired. We were in last summer with a revision on the plan as you see it, and for whatever reason, I thought that with the approval of that change to the plan, I thought we had asked about an extension to the order. When this was brought up to me, I did check the minutes of the meeting, and it only talked about the plan, not about an extension. So, in talking with Amy, she said that
a new filing would be required to finish the work there. The applicant currently has an offer to sell the lot as is to a new buyer who would finish the work there. So Amy had said that you have new regulations in place since the original order was approved. The original order was issued in 2013. I took a look at that, and again, as far as what's on the plan is what you saw last summer. There've been no changes to that. So in looking at the regulations, it appeared to me that sections 4.2 and 4.5 applied to this situation. 4.2 talks about setbacks for new activities and structures. And I felt that based on the way I read it, that this wasn't new construction, as work had already begun. And it appeared that section 4.5 was the more relevant section, which is wetland setbacks for existing structures and activities. And it further states that this work is associated with pre-existing structures or activities in place prior to August of 16. This one, the work, like I said, the original order was 2013. There was work done, and so I felt that that did comply. One of the changes we made last summer, even though we were working under the previous order and not the current regulations, they changed the lot line towards the front of the house and took some of the lot area from lot 12 and added it to 13. That allowed us to pull the house more in that direction, which created a bigger backyard, or a 51-plus foot setback.
So this plan that you've presented, does it represent your new lot line?
Yes.
Okay.
That was presented last summer that way.
Okay.
So it's in process, but it's not built all the way?
No, the well's in, well, it was cleared, the erosion control in, the driveway's roughed in, the common drive has been paved up to a certain point. They were just waiting to finish this before they finished the paving of that. It's been rough graded, the leach field was installed, and that's where it ended. So, like I said, I think at that point last year, the house on 12 was finished, and the emphasis became, we've got to sell that, we've got to get our sign-offs from all the various departments, including conservation. So the concentration at that point was finish the drainage, finish the driveway and the common driveway portion in front of lot 12. And lot 13 kind of got pushed back.
But they have started the septic on 13?
Yes.
To what extent?
The leach field is installed. But they
How
can't
long
put
ago?
in the tank and
Right. So
pump chamber until the foundation.
When did that start?
Ooh, it was before the expiration.
Okay.
I could double check that.
Because you're gonna make sure that doesn't expire as well.
Pardon me?
Make sure that doesn't
No,
expire.
Board of Health approval.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna be looking into that next.
Thoughts, everyone? It's always fun up here.
Well,
Amy, have you been out?
so, did you say the foundation was in or just clearing?
It's cleared and rough graded.
It's outside of the 50. 50 to 100.
How long ago did work stop?
Pardon me?
How long ago did work stop?
It was last summer.
So it's been a year.
Is it stable?
Yeah, it looked,
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
Vegetative.
No.
It's grown up.
Okay.
I mean, I would say, despite the fact that it was prior to the new regs, looks like it's all outside of the 50, except for the pump chamber, the septic. So,
Amy, did you say you have been out, or you haven't been out?
It's probably been 4 or 6 weeks since I've been out.
I think you just need Amy and another commissioner to go on site before you sign off on it, just because you've started and it's expired.
Is this related to that other firm that came in looking to repair the road? The culvert?
That was Ducharme
No.
Mills.
That was
Okay.
someone
It's
called.
the same development, though.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I mean,
There's no.
Different order of
Yeah,
conditions.
they
but-
don't,
Yeah,
cor-
it's a
they don't
different
correlate at all.
yeah, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we need to
I
say.
would continue it, and I think someone needs to go look at it.
So as an abutter, may I?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah, say your name, please.
Sure, Peter Buckley, 183 Harvard Road, Littleton, abutter.
Which number are you? What lot number?
9-ish.
Okay.
It's been a while. I've been there about 6 years.
Okay.
But it wasn't a all gas deal.
So as you drive in, you're on the left, or you're on the right?
I'm on the right.
You're on the
Oh, I'm not on Chestnut per se.
Okay.
You're on Harvard Road,
I'm
aren't
on
you?
Harvard Road.
Yes.
So just as nothing really about the development itself, it's, my concern is really that a project has a beginning and an end. And it seems like this is a never-ending project in Chestnut Lane, right?
I think we would agree with you.
Yeah, so I mean, I would,
Yeah.
as a project manager for a very large company, I'd love to have a never-ending project, because I'd always be busy, but my point is that equipment comes in, disturbs the land for a couple weeks, couple months, whatever it might be, and then it leaves.
Yeah.
It has a larger impact as it comes and goes, whether you're in the 50, the 100, or whatever other regulations you're referring to. Now you're gonna bring in yet more equipment, and it's getting to be close to the winter. The road has never been finished, the road is not recognized by the town, the road is not plowed by the town, and the post office does not recognize the town. School buses cannot go down the road. There's a million other things that are problematic in there, because again, we don't have a time frame in which he needs to finish.
I think we've got multiple players here, though.
I would, if, and I'm sure this gentleman is, I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name, please call you gentleman, but I'm sure you are a gentleman. But
Mostly.
I'm sorry?
Mostly.
Anyway, I'll take your word for it. But anyway, my point is that if they have a buyer, I'd love to see something that is signed, and I would fully support it, but the road has to be finished. We have school-age children, there's 8 school-age children here that stand at the top of Chestnut Lane and Harvard Road that catch the bus. When the plows plow the road, the kids have nowhere to stand other than in the road. So something this has to be completed. We can't, they've already stripped up the lot 15, I think it is. We all know about that one, and what a disaster that is up there. I think Ms. Rupp already said something about the bridge or something on the private road that is falling into the stream, into the wetlands there. That is problematic. So my concern.
We've actually never even finished some of the basins that are in there. So I've been on the commission long enough that I've gone through all of this, the stops and starts. So we certainly feel very conscious of everything that goes on in this site. But we have no jurisdiction to force someone to finish work. And that's because this is fragmented. The road is a separate piece. And we would love to have it finished as well.
And I know the focus of the committee, obviously, right, the conservation, but there has to be something within your powers, or what you can allow to.
I think it might be selectmen.
Okay, but
I think everything that you just said tonight is impactful. And I think it's the selectmen, however. So there's nothing that is inappropriate that's damaging, well, I haven't been out in probably 6 months, that's damaging to the wetlands. So there's nothing that would be a red flag for us to say, okay, we need to go in, there has to be a cease and desist. The basin wasn't finished, it still operates. So it's catching the drainage coming down the roads. Have anything ever been cleaned? No, but it's not impacting. So.
Also, I mean, sometimes we have leverage, like occupancy permits. We won't allow an occupancy permit unless something's finished.
Sure.
So sometimes we use that as a leverage.
Has the house been signed off yet? The one that's on, what would it be, 12?
Signed off.
That would be Amy.
It's occupied.
It's occupied, as far as an occupancy.
They've been there for about 4 months. Give or take.
I think every time we watch, as exciting as it is watching our meetings, every time, like we'll do now, we have reminders about meeting obligations and working in good faith and coming in for an ask or a favor of an extension. Is we need to see obligations being met. In order to
grant.
To grant an extension, when you're not under the new regs in the first place, when the definition of work started, when it's been a year since anything's happened, from what I understand, so there's some gray areas. I think we need to see the site, and I think we need to reconvene and have a conversation, but every time this project comes in, there's expressions of, that need to meet obligations, especially when, there's seeking to, grant an extension or, that type of thing.
But as you grant extensions, this just never ends. I mean.
Well, with extensions, so as long as it has not fallen in arrears, in terms of if it's already past its time, an extension is not historically granted. So, but based on DEP, we have to offer extensions at certain pieces. So the only time that this really comes into effect is if something is already past its expiration. So, and you can only ask so many times for your extensions, obviously. So,
Right,
but I think what we'll, as always, every time this comes up, we always go back out, and then we'll meet again October 7th.
Do you want to set up a site walk time now, or?
Friday.
Well, so in this case, though, he hasn't used up all, are we obligated to extend?
This is a new filing, this is not an extension. This is a new notice of intent because it expired.
Oh, I thought we were debating on whether or not we were going to extend it. No?
No.
It's a new
That's the
filing.
road.
With partially.
Yeah, the road is already,
planes.
I don't know where the road is on extensions now.
So with the new filing, does that mean that it falls within the new regulations?
Yes.
I think, based on the comments, I agree that this has taken much longer than it ever should have. If it were up to me, it wouldn't have happened, but I'm not the person in control.
Or the purse strings.
All I can say is, on the plus side, the reason I'm here is because he's selling it to somebody who wants to do something. To me, I think that's a good step. If the person had come forward or he had decided to market it earlier last year, maybe this would be different, but I think this is, personally, I think this is a positive step.
So actually, I can do Thursday afternoon or Friday morning. I can't do, or I can do the following week.
I could do Friday
I could
starting
do
at
another
10:30.
5:30 on Thursday.
I couldn't do that.
Can you do Thursday afternoon?
I do Thursday, I would need to be done by 5:30.
That's fine. Can you do Thursday? Anna, can you, either of you guys do Thursday?
Thursday at
Like 5?
5's not gonna take long.
I can race back for 5. Let's do it.
I could do 5:15.
I can definitely do a drive-by on my own.
So we'll say Thursday at 5 and
5.
loiter enough
Yeah.
that Andrew gets in there too.
Yep. I'll be
So
there
that's
at
the
5.
26th?
I'll do a drive-by.
Okay, and you're being extended. for the next meeting. Okay, thank you. I need one of those.
Just put 5-ish.
5. We tend to be early. Okay.
Great, thank you.
Steaming right along.
Yeah. Continued public hearing notice of intent, 225 Table Street, R10 lots 3, 6, and 7. Mass DEP file number 204-880, construction of 3-story office building, affiliated work, and a water treatment facility.
You can just put that on the table. It's only us, just throw it on the table, please.
This one?
Yep. Yep.
I have,
So while you're gathering those things, if you want to bring us up to date of when our last site walk was, because I know it was cold that day, and what we've done since then, and
Yep, happy to do it.
I have read your waiver request.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. It's okay.
Amy?
I would love one, thank you.
So, I would like to do a recap, since,
For the record, if you want to just introduce yourself.
all right, Will Park, civil engineer at SMMA out of Cambridge.
I'm Matt Devlin, wetland scientist at AECom.
Ed Scioli, project manager for the Guitars Company.
Scott Weiss with the Guitars Company as well. So, Gutierrez originally permitted this in the early, I know we have new members of the commission, welcome. Gutierrez Company originally permitted this in the early 2000s. Since we extended it several times, and then the board, or the commission asked that we submit a new notice of intent that meets the current wetland bylaw, the local bylaw. So that's what we did in November of last year. Part of that included a waiver, the waiver request form, because we had proposed from the previously approved project had disturbances within the wetland and within the 50-foot buffer. The commission asked that we reduce our impacts and provide an expanded waiver request alternatives analysis, which we did. Several variations of this wetland crossing here, this access drive that brings the main project out to the Foster Street, Taylor Street intersection. The preferred alternative was greatly reduced the impacts to 625 square feet of wetland alteration. Not filling, it's an alteration because we're proposing a 3-sided box culvert. The commission asked that we confirm with the planning board that this driveway alignment aligned with Foster Street is a requirement of this project and the program shown, and they agreed that it most definitely was a requirement for this. Meanwhile, we've been proactively doing testing on the site. We're going to provide a 3-on-1 wetland mitigation area. Matt did testing of the groundwater there in the heaviest rainfall, June? May?
It's done May, late May.
So we've been proactively doing testing and other various requests of the commission.
What have you learned with your testing?
Yeah, the groundwater ranges, it's about 2 feet below the ground. We're extending about 30 feet from the wetland boundary. It's a lot less of an area. When we were out there previously, it extended all the way across here. Now it's just this little tiny piece, because I think before we had to get I think it was about 1,800 square feet of wetland impact for about 4,000 square feet of replication. So now it's only 1,200 square feet of replication. So the groundwater is near the surface, and it should be suitable for hydrology.
Sarah, you asked us to introduce the sidewalks. I skipped over that. So after our initial hearing, we did go out on a sidewalk with Sarah and Anna.
Amy.
And Amy, of course. We walked pretty much the whole perimeter here. We kind of skipped over this section.
Have you removed any of the antiques for your own personal collection?
I'll get to that, and the short answer is no. We have observed a section, an area here that seemed to have a low point. Matt did an auger in the field when you were present and observed hydric soils, I believe, and then went back and did a full data plot analysis, and it was deemed, well...
Determined there's no connection, basically. It's an isolated wetland.
Okay.
Yeah, there.
So, at the last hearing, we were challenged with, as part of the waiver request, to demonstrate a net public environmental benefit. As you know, this is a undeveloped site, pretty much undisturbed. There is a debris pile right here of just an old junk pile. There's no contaminants that we're aware of. As the project progresses, as we stated in a previous cover letter, we fully intend to do all of the investigations in cooperation with this commission to work with DEP to find out if there are contaminants and properly dispose of those materials. The proposed stormwater management system fully complies with the current stormwater regs. The site, given the soils and wetlands, is not conducive to groundwater recharge, so it's not a good site to provide over recharge. It's just not the right site for that. So as we put our heads together, and the Gutierrez company is offering a conservation restriction area along the southern, more desirable part of the site, totaling 16.4 acres, of which 4.2 is upland. Matt, can you talk
Yeah,
about the environmental?
so this southern area is mature forested, so this conservation restriction will provide a contiguous area of forested habitat that will link. There's 3 vernal pools that are down here, and the upland forested habitat will provide habitat long-term for the salamanders and wildlife using this area, so we'll provide a contiguous area of forested upland
Are the
habitat.
vernals on there?
They are in a different color.
Here.
So that's wetland B.
Okay.
So that's vernal pool B. That was previously the blue spotted salamander.
Yeah.
All potential vernal pools too, not
Yeah.
certain.
That's what I thought, yeah. So 1, 2.
And then 3 is off near the highway. So 2 is there and 3 is out here. So this area is severe topography. It's fairly steep but well shaded. So it's a good chunk of land here, providing a setback from the development to this vernal pool that's potentially has blue spotted salamanders as well.
So, for those who can't do the math, 600 square feet of wetland alteration to 16.4 acres, or sorry, just 4.2 acres of upland is a 300 to 1 ratio of mitigation, if you can make that comparison. So we feel that with the significant efforts to reduce the impacts to a mere 625 square feet of alteration, And this conservation restriction area that provides a benefit for not only the species that could be on site, but adjacent to the site. If you're familiar with the mappings, there's a lot of conservation restriction areas south of the project. We feel that this satisfies the net environmental public benefit component of the waiver request.
Out of curiosity, is there any walking trails going to be proposed in here to go with the people working in the building?
They are not proposed right now. The grading plan shows some pretty steep terrain out here. So between that and
the rules, I wouldn't.
Oh, I was
Yeah,
curious.
no, I think it's a great question. Have you started to look or ponder at language for the CR?
have not.
Okay.
So is the area offered for the CR buildable?
It could be, yes. This area here, that area there,
Without a crossing?
without a crossing, correct?
It looks like, there's some Oliver stuff. Looks like it's, that southern area is mapped as core habitat. Where to go? Core habitat forest, as well as core habitat for species of conservation concern, like this southern area. I'm reading that. Looks like it matches up. That pie slice, and some of their parcels did not exactly match, like your parcel isn't quite right, but it looks to me like that pie slice is here.
Yeah.
Which would put some of this in here.
Yeah, so
So do you think species from there, or, you know, the intent of this could also be, you know, on your site? You know, and as far as like the analysis of, you know, environmental impacts and resources impacted, like, I guess, could you speak to that? Because I think you did some habitat work, right?
Yeah, what's the exact question?
I'm wondering, so we have these areas mapped, you know, that are core forest habitat, and we're talking about the impacts of the project. Could you speak to the impacts of the project on, you know, the core
Yeah,
forest as a whole?
Certainly, yeah. I mean, the northern portion of this site has historically gone through some disturbance in the past, you know, last 40 years or so. So the mature, more larger trees and forests are certainly down the southern portion, and up in the northern portion, there's a larger sized trees with a better canopy. There's more of a higher sun angle, and the ground heats up more here, where this is more forested, provides more of a mesic shady habitat area. So
Could you show where, I don't understand, how much of that is your property and how much of it isn't, of the core habitat?
Sure.
That dark green?
Well, they're like blobs on Oliver too, so.
Our property is, the property is above my palm.
Okay.
Yeah, so some of it.
So some of it would be protected in perpetuity.
Okay, so the
Part of
little
the area
triangle.
being offered is.
Let me see this. Okay, so
seems to be
this,
a protected
this
area.
area here is that.
This is this up here.
Okay.
And so there used to be some road or something that did a big shoehorn through this area here. And then these parcels here are these ones. And then you can actually see the town line is that blue line there, is right here.
Actually, that was a farm. One point I can remember the house and barn being there.
Okay, so that's.
Is the question
that's
you're
a value then.
asking, is it buildable anyways because of its habitat?
No, you can still build on habitat, but they're.
In terms of its reach?
No, the question I'm asking is getting a full picture of the, you know, the resources that are impacted, and because this is mapped as a value area by Mass GIS, you know, is there a sign telling the salamanders not to continue across? Because there's, down here is the species of concern is mapped, and so I'm just looking for an opinion regarding the value of the land, we're looking at, developing. and
Sure,
then-
this is more suitable habitat for salamanders in the southern part. They could traverse the back here into this wetland as well, but certainly this area is more highly suitable for
And perhaps that's why they
amphibian
mapped it as
migration
such.
and things like that.
And so, to beat a dead horse, so going back to the planning board question, the question was, can your project take on another configuration, not just confirming what you had already drawn out? It was, so, a number of applicants, they, in order to look at the alternatives analysis and in order to say something like, hey, if we don't have this exact configuration, this is no longer, a viable project for us. Like, I don't feel as though that is information that's been provided yet. And, we were looking for, we understand, okay, so you need 2 driveways. Can there be 2 separate buildings with just the 2? Can you lose the back? Is there, that crossing, essentially. So that's kind of been the basis for, our conversations. And I think, I appreciate that you guys have, definitely pared down the crossing. It still remains that this is a waiver situation, and it still remains, what does this project look like without needing a waiver? Is that possible? So that's information we just don't have yet, and that's information that is required for us to figure out what the alternatives are.
Yeah, if I may, again, Scott Weiss with the
Please
Beginners
do.
Company. So I think the response to that is sort of backing up for a second.
Yep.
The project really consists of sort of 2 pods, if you will, which is one is here, and the larger area is here. And the requirement and the reason for confirming with the planning board the need for this was not to confirm solely, gee, did you guys approve the project as it was and you still approve it, is this link specifically is a requirement to access really this backside. It's not to have 2 access points per se, it's to make this the primary access point for all of this land, so that from a safety, from an impact to the neighbors, from that perspective, you don't have all the vehicles traveling further down Taylor Street, to make the Taylor-Foster Street intersection the primary access point. And without that crossing, you can't really develop and access this area, because from, again, the safety and traffic perspective, to have all of that traffic coming here, even if it was a smaller development, you still have everybody to get there to come here. So the intent is really to get through this intersection, to access this land, again, industrially zoned land, to have your access, your primary access here, and the perspective was from where we were with the prior approvals, had roughly a 6,000 square foot wetland impact. That's been reduced.
Shy of 5,000, yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yes,
Sorry.
I recall that.
Yeah.
I was like, wait,
Yeah.
are they really within a few feet
Yeah.
of 5,000?
And so now where we're at, it's almost a
Yeah,
10% reduction.
we recognize that.
Trying to do everything we can to reduce the impacts by coming through here. If we could simply delete that and have the access here, we would do it. It's not an issue of multiple access points, it's an issue of the traffic and safety, and focusing that and keeping it here rather than continuing down Taylor Street and having the impacts that go along with that, both from a safety and a neighborhood perspective.
But if it was 2 separate lots, you would still have 2 separate entrances. So if the lot had been cut in half, and as you said, it's industrial zone, we would still be looking at 2 separate entrances, regardless of public safety.
If they weren't under current common ownership, you're saying?
Yeah.
Well, even under common ownership, you could have 2 separate lots.
Right, I'm not
Separately.
even sure what the exact lotting is right there to begin with, but as I
Don't rely on
understand
that,
it-
because that's,
Yeah.
I think that one's right.
Yeah.
I think we need a little more substantiation, like a little more information about, why the project can't be smaller.
So it's not a level of smaller. again, if you just eliminated this building and you're more than half the size, you still have the same issue. If you do anything other than single-family homes here, you're gonna have that same traffic and safety concern that you would have at any size, because it's not a size per se, it's really
Traffic volume.
It's not a traffic volume, it's a safety and access concern.
Right.
Safety being
Based
not just the
on-
number of vehicles, but it's where the access is, coming down the street, it
Right,
narrows down. and
visibility, traffic,
that's
et
right.
cetera, yes.
Right, so it's
Right.
not a volume per se as much as you either do or you don't. So if that access point is not available, going back to the planning board and going through that process again, would probably, it would essentially be a taking of that land for that zoned purpose, because they would not allow it to be accessed solely from the current access point. So I think
So wait,
we're trying
so
to do everything we
to be
can
clear-
to minimize that.
To be clear, okay, so if you had one building here and one building here, and not this, and you had one entrance here and
They're
one
not
entrance
allowing
here,
a
that's
second, they're
not
not allowing a
allowed?
second entrance regardless, is what he's saying.
But if this wasn't here,
Right.
then the traffic volume would be less, and would that
We're not
still
talking
be?
about a volume thing, we're talking about a safety and.
But you still have don't you still have an entrance here?
Yes, which we are trying to minimize and eliminate the usage of.
But if
by directing
without
traffic
this
to come
building
through.
here, wouldn't it reduce the volume and
It would
therefore
reduce
reduce
the volume,
the
sure.
safety issue as well?
It would lessen the number of occurrences of safety concern, but it doesn't eliminate the safety concern.
If this was the only office built, these occupants and perhaps people reviewing the project would still want them to exit out this in the much more established section of Taylor Street at an established intersection versus this part of it where it's like a
So
completely
pretend you
different
don't
roadway.
own
I
over
don't
there.
know that they'd
You-
make you
you
go through
couldn't-
that hardship,
You couldn't
financial
develop
hardship.
this, if you didn't own that other spot, you couldn't just, like, develop just this. Like, how would that work?
We do own it,
Yeah,
so
they do.
the
Well,
it
right,
would kind of.
but, so that's what we're
force the
asking though, so
answer
the wetlands are
Right.
taking the impact instead of a reconfiguration of traffic or a relook at how else could we possibly do this? Because we need to do a waiver, and
Right,
so we
it's
need a
not- I
basis for a
understand.
waiver, and so offering land that is iffy to be developed in the first place is it's a hard,
So just
Hard
understand.
Amy, was our position stated prior to some of these meetings with planning board? Did they understand the wetlands impact?
You mean eons ago?
Yeah.
That was, what, at least 10 years ago, wasn't it?
Right.
Yeah, that was quite a while ago.
but you went to planning board in the spring, like April or something, right? To confirm
Yes.
that this is what they wanted. Did you ask them, can we do something else?
Did you go through iterations?
That's what I'm
with them?
asking.
That's the problem.
Did this present planning board say to you, you must maintain what was presented 10 years ago? Was it presented to them that conservation sees this as not appropriate and would like the two separate? I thought that's where
Yeah,
this
what we
was
asked.
going, was
Yeah.
that you were gonna be able to say, look, I'm doing my diligence, I wanna make sure that this is where we're staying, can we possibly do that? I thought that was
Yeah.
being done after numerous conversations that were.
But that's not what was represented in the written documentation we were given back, which was we confirmed with the planning board that this is what we have to do. And perhaps
With
that
this
wasn't
configuration.
accurately characterized of what actually happened.
And if
but
that
what
was 10 years
represented.
later, based on the travel on Taylor, I would think that under the new fire regulations, road regulations, it would warrant just having a conversation with them.
Well, as I understand, the conversation was, is the link still required? And because that's where the focus is and that's where the impact is.
But they
And the
also have to
response
take
was
into
yes.
account wetlands. as well.
And we weren't just looking at whether that's required, we wanted an alternatives analysis, which is reconfiguring different ways of arranging it to minimize the wetland impact.
Well, you did get an alternatives analysis from where it was originally, which was much different than what it is now.
The alignment, we dragged it more outside the 50-foot no disturb through here. There was
See,
more
I don't
wetland
see that
impact.
as significantly different.
It's an alternative of what can we do with the project as a whole, not, the small piece. And I understand engineering isn't cheap and you wanna, change as little as possible, which makes sense and is a natural thing. But from an alternatives analysis standpoint, we always ask projects to tell us what would the project, if you got completely out of the wetland, what does that look like? What does that look like for you? Why is that a massive problem for you? We need that explanation.
So the link, the only difference is whether or not that link exists. There's no way
And
of
get out of the
providing the
50.
link with any less impact than what these fine gentlemen have come up with. And there's no other way. And so it becomes a situation between the requirements of the commission and the requirements of the planning board for that, to have that link.
So did you ask the planning board for a different project configuration? Because I don't think that
We
that
asked them
happened.
about the requirement for the link.
With
Whether that was-
different amounts of buildings. Say if you had just two buildings
Or
on
two
either side, do they
separate.
still require a link? Or,
Right.
that sort of thing needs to be fleshed out so that we know that this is the only way it can exist with this much impact, the crossing.
How many potential parking spaces do you have out of curiosity?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Awful lot. Be a lot of cars.
I don't.
Yeah, it's probably about 1,000 spaces.
Yeah, I was gonna guess 900.
900 to 1,000
900
spaces.
cars on a very busy street now, especially going to the train station at certain times of the day.
Isn't that other development on the other side of Taylor? Pretty vacant?
A lot of it's
Monarch,
vacant.
A lot of it's vacant,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Some is, some isn't. Seems to spur out.
Well, part of the reason why this hasn't been built, frankly, in the years leading up to this point is there hasn't been a demand for it.
Is there a demand for
So
it
you're
now?
gonna fill it if we fill the buildings?
Well, honestly, we won't build it unless there's a user in hand, somebody who wants to lease the space and needs the space. There's activity, but, we are building the building in Westboro right now, so.
And IBM just laid a bunch of people off too, down the
They
center
really?
of town. And I think they're tearing down off of Monarch Drive, or in that area, they're tearing down one building and putting up one of those, what do you call it, remote,
Fulfillment center, right?
huh?
Fulfillment center, like packages and stuff?
Yeah. So, I mean, things changing all the time.
So we want to try to be responsive. We thought the team was trying to be responsive.
He's definitely trying to be responsive.
Yes.
I would substantiate that
Yeah.
the team is
Yeah.
trying to be responsive.
Right, and trying to do everything we can, and we're kind of stuck between a position between the two boards, the two commission and the board at this point, to satisfy our requirements of our planning board approval and to get an updated new order of conditions. So
Actually, if
meeting
you
make
turned it
sense,
into a commuter parking lot, you might be real happy, people would
Oh,
be real
yeah, there
happy.
you go, commuter park, oh, jeez. Amy, would a meeting with Maren, like an informal discussion, maybe that makes sense, because I
Okay,
feel
that
like
makes
I feel like we are kind of beating a dead horse, and maybe that would help to try to, I think it would really help for us to have a much better understanding, of where planning can and can't.
Yeah, we'd have a commissioner or two come in to meet with
Yeah.
Lauren and maybe someone
No, I'd be
else from the
willing
planning
to.
board.
Yeah. No, I'd be willing to go.
Yeah, because I mean, we want both you and us to be satisfied. So, we want you to be able to build what you need, but right now we don't feel like there's been enough analysis for
So the
alternatives.
fact that we haven't done, a no-build analysis or a significantly reduced
Build list
analysis. 625 square feet, this massive conservation restriction area with incredible benefits. Have we proved the net environmental benefit enough to substantiate the waiver?
I think the issue is the alternatives analysis still has gaps. And so we can't, in good faith as, appointed folks for our town to carry out our wetlands regulations, we need to substantiate that, which means we need quantifiable information, and we need an alternatives analysis without gaps. If you watch, I think you've been here enough and perhaps heard deliberations, the projects that we deliberate over, always one of the, and obviously a no action alternatives is an undeveloped site, which we recognize is, puts you in a tough spot. So I'm not looking for you to analyze not developing the site at all, but we haven't seen, any reduction in the project at all as an alternative, and had a discussion about why that's not economically feasible, or, defeats the purpose of what you're trying to do, or, and then, have a basis of that. We haven't,
So-
we need to see that.
The economics of it is up for review, and if,
So just to be clear, you're not asking for a reduction in size. That's not the issue. The issue is the connection, the need for the connection.
In order to justify a waiver to impact the wetlands and the 50, which is something we have to, issue a waiver for, we need to be able to substantiate that.
Well, I think the issue of reducing the size is whether or not that would prevent you from having to have the crossing in
Right,
the first
you
place.
believe that the
Yeah.
reduction in
Well, we
size
don't know
eliminates
that.
the
We
connection,
don't-
but I'm.
we just don't know that.
saying
We
that
are
isn't. You can go to the
proposing-
planning board and
Right,
have that
and
discussion.
our impression is that you have not presented that option to the planning board, so you may not know if, say, just separating them and having two buildings will enable you to have an entrance there with reduced reduced enough safety concerns that it will be allowable by the planning board.
Right, just to be clear, the safety doesn't change based on volume. Volume is not a safety issue. I am a traffic engineer, by the way.
It's the siteability or whatever.
It's site visibility and other concerns and speed. Sometimes more traffic slows cars down and can be a safety benefit. So
We definitely need more traffic here.
volume and size is not the issue in terms of safety.
But
Just
they
putting that
definitely,
there
but
is
they
a
allow
volume.
you to have, an entrance
They
there.
allow us to have.
So
an
in what instances would they
allow
say
that
that?
solely.
Like a variance.
Yes, and I understand that, so we
then
I
it's
believe
getting,
Is that a
we
full
asked the
entrance
question.
down there, or is that a right turn out?
It is a full entrance, and we will confirm.
fire probably will keep that requirement.
Yeah, they will always need, they'll want to have multiple access points,
Yeah.
but that's common.
But are there other ways to do it?
I mean, yeah, so that's what we're looking for.
But,
It
I mean,
almost
if
makes
you're
more
willing-
sense to have two
Some of the
entrances
commissioners
anyway.
available when you talk to the planning
So
board,
you're
so
not
to
putting
make
all
sure
the
that things get.
900 cars
Yeah, I think an
through.
informal discussion would be between planning this.
And in terms of your economic viability of the project, if this is what we say we require, what do you need for information to substantiate that?
Well, I mean, our regs say least environmentally practicable alternative. So if economics is part of the practicability, then you need to say why.
Okay.
Right, like if our building is this small but we're targeting this type of industry, we can't, like, for example.
Can't do it.
We can't do that. Like, that's part of it.
Okay.
Where's your septic system? Said you were gonna put a septic system someplace here
There's an underground leach field here with a wastewater treatment facility.
for all 3 buildings?
Correct. That was a long analysis too.
So I'm assuming that
You still have
it's
utility
pipe through
costs.
the connection for this building
You have utilities.
to get to the back.
Oh,
Which could also be a temporary disturbance, not a permanent disturbance.
that's true. Yeah, I mean, there's, road salt and, permanent impacts.
With the road, yeah.
But, yeah, utility, I'd be willing to.
So what are you basically trying to tell them they gotta do? So
Well,
we
I want
can
to see if we
move-
get a
Yeah.
meeting together with Lauren and maybe a planning board member.
Yeah.
Okay. We meet on the 7th, I guess it is.
Okay, well, thank you for the discussion. We'll
Thank
be
you.
hearing from us again.
Good, I can't help point out, we still need a third-party review at the store.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's,
Does it make sense to initiate that review?
Not until we sort out, I
Yeah.
think, the
Now you've sat down with a round table with the planning board and the conservation.
Well, it'd be at your risk.
Okay.
All right?
Thank you.
And are we gonna deal with continuing public hearing, notice of mass-based transportation? Are they here tonight?
So, no, because they had not had a chance to refresh the wetlands flags. I did just this afternoon get the proposal from Hudson and Neal for the third-party review for that. At just under, the stormwater was about $4,000. I did ask them to do a peer review of the wetland delineation just in case, so that's 1,100, and meeting attendance. So Holly, the T has not had a chance, or at least they haven't gotten back to me yet about if this is acceptable to them. So I didn't know if you wanted to just put off discussion of this and talk October 7th, or just let me deal with the T. And if the T is accepting of this, we can get this moving.
And
So,
I'd let you deal with it so it keeps moving forward.
yeah, I mean, it seems reasonable to me. They're just
Yeah,
gonna
they're just
do the
gonna-
basic DEP, and-
Yeah.
which they've done. And they already have a contract set up with Highway, so it should go over easy.
yeah, I think it's fine to.
Did,
keep that moving.
I'm going back to other updates and administrative action. Did we ever,
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
did we ever get any information or a notice of intent from those people down at Mary Shepherd?
No, I had an interesting discussion because he sent me an email saying, that's not a perennial stream. So I had to go back to the old files and say, yes, there's actually handwritten notes on the approved plan saying, this is where the intermittent stream and this is where it's perennial. So they thought they were out of it, but they're not out of it. So they'll be back.
Have they hired an engineer or anything yet?
Yeah, it's Kevin, who's with Stamsky. I forget who it is. Someone you've seen before.
Okay. No, I just was wondering where it stood.
Yeah, I thought they were getting close, but I think they saw a little glimmer.
Right.
And realized that wasn't there. I told them they're welcome to try to convince you it's intermittent, but apparently there's a big discussion and it was determined to be perennial at a certain point.
Okay.
Cardillo is gonna be coming in for a certificate of compliance. I don't know if anybody wanted to walk the site before then. That's what I just mentioned to Sarah, 'cause I'm sure some, and I'm not gonna wanna go climbing all over the rocks out there. So I'll send out something on that one. I get a tour of aggregate, because they might be doing some basic cleaning, so that could be fun.
Don't do it at noontime.
Why, is that when they last?
Yes.
I don't think
That's
they'll
what-
They're probably gonna let you over there.
I think I'm set up at 8 o'clock, I can't remember. No, that's DOT, I'm set up at 8 o'clock. DOT's, they were doing the Route 2 clearing, and one of the requirements of the determination was that I go out and see if they can limit the tree cutting, so we'll see what happens with that. And actually, the only other thing is the MAC Fall Conference, I don't know if anybody was interested in going to that.
When is it?
It's October 19th at Devon's, actually.
Oh.
They're not having down at Paul's Cross. So there's actually a couple things I might go to, though I'm reluctant. Well, I'll scan this and send it around to you.
Okay.
Okay. Ooh.
Anybody get anything else they need
My daughter's
to
having a
throw
black
on the
belt.
table?
Hey, just really quickly, because I know we're really late. So I had looked through the stormwater handbook just to get a better understanding of like treatment for different BMPs, and then also, curious about the Atlas 14 standards, which includes the last 30 years of precipitation, and is a lot more accurate. However, I understand that the Mass Wetlands Stormwater uses Bulletin 71, which is from the 1970s, so the precipitation data being used for all of the stormwater analyses is very, very, very old and not applicable to what we're getting even, 10 years ago, never mind what we're seeing now. And so I'm wondering if there's something we can do about that because we just have so much development occurring, and I feel as though we need accurate, and it's obviously for another day. When we talk about stormwater and when we get reviews, it's based on very, very old data, and they've found pretty significant increases in the amount of rain, which I think everybody's seen. So we're not imagining.
Let me double check what the town stormwater bylaw says, because I know there's been discussions in a lot of towns about requiring.
I mean, how do you implement something? Like, how do you implement something with, super out of date?
It's difference in 100-year
data.
It's a pretty big difference.
Yeah.
I mean, wouldn't we be, if we need it, if it's not in the Littleton Town bylaw, we could either push for it to be in the stormwater bylaw, or we could add it to ours.
Right.
Right.
Well, so that's what I'm wondering. It might be a rabbit hole, because if you're telling somebody to do the DEP stormwater thing, but can we just say do that, but use Atlas 14 and not Bulletin 71?
Right.
I'm not sure. It's probably a rabbit hole, but just from a contextual standpoint, what's required is not.
Why don't I check with town council, because I know they deal with this all the time, and see if she's got any.
Okay.
But the state must be figuring something, because the traffic circle up to here is a huge retention area being dug.
Oh, really?
I mean, it's huge.
Really?
It's probably 20 feet deep.
Oh, interesting.
And probably 50 feet wide.
Wow.
They dug out.
That's what it is. That's what's going on.
I believe that's what I was told. It's going. So somebody knows something.
Yeah. Oh, I wonder if it's the treatment for the PFAS from Devon's.
There's a huge, must be a 2-foot pipe that's in the middle of it that's coming from somewhere.
Could be a pump up. I don't know.
It looks like it's an old pipe, so it must be drainage or something through there.
Could be.
Well, PFAS, doesn't it adhere to organics? So
it moves everywhere.
It wouldn't volatilize, in other words.
No,
it's just,
it's not. It just carbon filtration.
Adheres.
They have,
almost like PCBs, it sort of settles and adheres.
They have found that it's showing up in a whole lot of different things. As far as some of these pellets have been spreading on the fields.
Yeah,
It's
the biosolids?
Yeah.
I've heard about that.
And the pet pet food cans.
Yeah.
Yes.
Still is lined with it.
I mean,
Well, that's
it's like fast food
BPA.
wrappers, aids.
Yeah.
We did testing for it as a company. They couldn't wear deodorant to go into
Yeah.
people's homes to do the testing because they could contain. You're talking parts per billion that you're
Yeah.
testing for. So the smallest little
trillion.
cross, yeah, right, the trillions.
You can't wear rain
You
gear.
can't- Right, yeah.
Although I think you can
It was
now,
like,
but
you couldn't brush
it's.
your teeth. You couldn't do shampoo, deodorant. It's just
Gross.
Yeah.
Hello.
Right.
Here it is.
Test your water. We're gonna test your water.
Can I come in?
If there's no more, can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Shut it off.
Aye.
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 I did notice